Hey everyone, before we caravan into ancient inns, do me a favor, hit that like button if you're enjoying these sleepy history journeys, and subscribe for more oddly soothing tales. Let me know in the chat where you're watching from and what time it is. There's nothing cozier than knowing our global caravan is gathered here tonight. Now, dim the lights and maybe switch on a gentle fan for that steady hum. Snuggle up as we slip behind the stone archways of the Silk Roads, hidden overnight in places where weary traders traded gossip, and goat hair blankets under lantern light. Imagine lantern-lit courtyards, saffron-stained terraces, and the hush of desert winds against thick mud brick walls. These weren't grand caravans or just humble rest stops whose quiet routines kept a continent-spanning network alive. Tonight, you'll learn how simple wooden pallets dusted with felt, carefully rationed water cisterns, and soft-footed guards shaped global commerce one dusty footstep at a time. So settle onto your felt mat, listen for the drip of courtyard fountains, and let's drift into the first chapter of Silk Road Traders' hidden overnight inns. Picture yourself at dusk on a dusty caravan trail, the last camel's bell fading. Into the desert hush, yet ahead lies a hidden inn, where traders like you have slept on wooden platforms dusted with saffron and shared whispered tales under lantern light. What secrets did those vaulted archways hold? And how did these unassuming rest stops shape the grand Silk Road? Welcome, traveler. You've journeyed hundreds of miles from Chang'an or Antioch, your caravan's camels laden with silks, spices, and porcelains destined for distant markets. As twilight deepens, your eyelids grow heavy, gourds of water and scraps of flatbread clutched in tired hands. The valley before you seems empty save for a single stone archway, carved with ancient script. This is no ordinary ruin. Behind that, ARCH hides a caravanserai, a humble inn built by local rulers to shelter merchants through blistering summers and bone-chilling winters alike. Here, traders from Sogdiana and Samarkand, Persia and Arabia, have found refuge on wide wooden platforms, lined with blankets of goat hair felt. Lanterns burn steadily in shaded alcoves, their saffron glow beckoning you to rest. In the central courtyard, a fountain's gentle drip soothes your parched throat, while a courtyard of pomegranate trees strains against the starry sky. Over the next few hours, you'll discover the unvarnished details of these hidden overnight inns, the precise bricklaying techniques that kept out desert winds, the carefully rationed water cisterns, the silent signals that warned of bandits on the road. You'll learn how these nondescript way stations held together an entire transcontinental network, one night's rest at a time. So settle onto your felted pallet, let the murmuring fountain lull your thoughts, and prepare to drift into the first chapter of a sleepy pilgrimage across the Silk Road. Silk Road traders hidden overnight inside who've been traveling for days or perhaps weeks across the unforgiving steppes and sun-baked deserts of Central Asia. Your caravan's camels plod in single file, each burdened with bolts of Kashmiri shawls, jars of Kashgar grapes preserved in honey, and carved lacquer boxes filled with Chang'an tea. By late afternoon, the sun has begun its slow descent, painting the horizon in dusty rose and saffron. Your throat is parched, the straps of your own saddle chafing your shoulders, and your feet, once eager to roam new lands, now ache for a simple place to rest. In the distance, you spot a lone stone arch rising from the horizon, a squat ruin half buried in sand. To the untrained eye, it might appear abandoned, another relic of bygone empires. Yet seasoned traders know this silhouette well, the entrance to a caravanserai, a hidden overnight inn where weary travelers find shelter, water, and a few hours. A forgotten sleep. Approaching the caravanserai as you draw nearer, the arch gives way to a thick mud brick wall, nearly 2 meters high, punctuated by a single gateway. A guardhouse stands sentinel, Low stone benches flank its entrance, and 2 men in felt caps lean against the wall, sipping watered wine. At your wave, one stirs, rubbing sleep from his eyes, and beckons you forward with a single finger. You approach on foot, leading your camel through the wooden doors reinforced with iron studs. The portals swing inward with a soft creak that echoes off the courtyard's high walls. Inside, the courtyard lies empty, but for a single well at its center stone-lined, with a leather bucket dangling from a pulley. Beyond the well, you glimpse rows of vaulted alcoves, their wooden platforms raised a few feet above the flagstone floor. Each alcove is roughly the size of a small bed chamber, and large enough to hold the traders and a goods-laden mule. The guard squints at your credentials, a small parchment stamped with the governor's seal. He nods, steps aside, and waves you into the courtyard. His tone is matter-of-fact. Water is free, betting costs to coins. That's it. No negotiated bribes. No last-minute unofficial fees. Here, at these hidden inns carved out of desert, the Empire's writ still holds some measure of order. The layout and daily rhythm you follow a narrow flagstone path that rings the courtyard's perimeter. Noting the ingenious design, each alcove faces the courtyard's center, where a narrow channel carries off rainwater during rare desert showers. Stone gargoyles carved into the walls guide any excess water away from the raised platforms, keeping them dry even when dust storms sweep in moisture from distant dunes. Along the southern wall, you find a covered area housing the latrine, a long bench pierced at regular intervals, backed by thick screens of woven reed. Beneath, a cistern collects runoff, preventing noxious odors. Across from it, an oven built into the wall radiates gentle heat. Bakers pack it nightly to prepare flatbreads, 11 loaves for the next morning's departures. The smell of sorrel mingles with the faint tingle of salt lingering from the courtyard well. At the courtyard's northwest corner stands a small prayer niche, its arched opening painted with fading geometric patterns. A faded inscription in Sogdian reminds travelers to give thanks before resting. You notice a scattering of small coins in the niche's base offering left by devout merchants, too weary to repair their saddles before entering. Community in the margins be twilight, the courtyard stirs. A group of silk weavers from Kashgar share their evening porridge, bulgur groats, cooked with goat's milk, seasoned with a handful of crushed walnuts and a drizzle of honey. They ladle the thick porridge from an iron pot onto flat wooden plates, offering you a taste. Nearby, a merchant from Samarkand meticulously arranges his camel hair rugs against the wall, preparing them for the night's chill. You exchange murmured greetings in a patchwork of Turkic, Persian, and Arabic. Under the vaulted arches, traders exchange news, reports of bandits sighted beyond the next oasis, the price of pepper rising in the western markets, rumors of an epidemic halted by the caliph's physicians. In this microcosm, vast empires converge. Chinese monications of silk, Persian prescriptions of rose water, Indian spices preserved in resin. Though you each come from distant corners, you share the same need for water, warmth, and an audience for your stories. The nighttime ritualist stars emerge first one, then a smattering, then a dense carpet of light. You prepare your palate. You roll out a felted blanket woven with goat hair strands, lay a coarse woolen sheet on top, and rest your head on a small leather bolster. The guards extinguish their oil lamps, leaving only lanterns hung beneath each alcove's arch. Their saffron-tinted glow throws long, shifting shadows across the courtyard's gently worn stones. Before sleep, you draw water from the well, rinse your face, and sip the cool liquid. Elsewhere, traders perform their own nighttime rites. One carefully folds her embroidered robe and drapes it over the platform's edge. Another lays out a prized manuscript so it will dry beneath the lantern's warmth. In the muffled hush, you hear the soft drip of the well house, the distant tinkle of a camel's bell, and the rhythmic breathing of companions drifting to sleep long ago. Some caravanserai hosted visiting judges who settled disputes over stolen wares or unpaid dues. Others included a small room where traveling physicians pounded herbs to treat dehydration and scorpion stings. You imagine the many hands that have carved these walls, the travelers who have slept here before you, and the countless dawns that began in this quiet courtyard. Beyond shelter, the strategic importance at these inns were not mere rest stops. They were vital nodes in a network that spanned continents. Rulers along the Silk Road from the Abbasid caliphs in the west to the Tang governors in the east subsidized their construction. They provided safe havens against sandstorms, and marauders ensured the steady flow of commerce and extended imperial influence into remote sands. Tax collectors recorded nightly guest lists in ledgers bound with camel hide covers. Every traveler's name, origin, and cargo were noted, contributing to a vast bureaucracy that, in aggregate, enriched empires far from these dusty walls. Yet these wayside inns remained modest, while palaces gleamed with fountains, silk curtains, and gilded stucco. The caravanserai offered only what was essential: sturdy shelter, secure walls, and simple hospitality. Such restrained luxury proved far more effective in spurring trade than ornate courtly patronage ever could. The unseen stories of stranger sives stir in the night, sensing a shift in the courtyard's air. Lantern flames gutter as a desert wind sneaks beneath the doors. You sit up to peer into the darkness and notice an empty alcove across from you. The Kashgar weavers' looms lie untouched, their owners having moved on at dawn. Traders often departed before daybreak, seeking to cover as much ground as possible in the cooler morning hours. You rise, slip into a felt cloak, and step onto the flagstones to find traces of footprints leading toward the northern gate, the only faint sign of those gone. The courtyard feels vast in the dim light, its silence broken only by the drip-drip of the well. Somewhere beyond the walls, dunes undulate beneath starlight. Your own journey continues at first light, but for now, you linger on the threshold between wakefulness and sleep, enveloped by the same hush that has comforted thousands across centuries. What conversations have melted into that hush? What deals were struck here under the watchful eyes of guards and gods? Whose precious cargo was lost or stolen within these walls, and who found unexpected kindness from a stranger in need? As you settle back onto your pallet, the lanterns glow dancing on the sand-coated stones. You realize this humble inn holds countless untold stories on each pallet, in every folded rug, behind every stenciled inscription. You awake long before dawn, the first pale fingers of light slipping beneath the caravanserai's heavy wooden doors. The courtyard is hushed now, save for the low rumble of camels shifting on their pallets and the gentle drip of water from the well's pulley. You stretch, dust brushing from your cloak, and step onto the flagstones, the cool stones crawling upward through the soles of your boots. As you breathe in the crisp morning air, you recall the night's flickering lantern glow and the mosaic of traders who shared this refuge with you, each with a cargo to protect, a destination to reach, and a story written in footfalls across. Distant sands dot today. You follow a single thread through these walls, the journey of Ahmad ibn Farik, a merchant from the Khorasan region whose velvet-draped saddlebags carried precious manuscripts. Bound for the Abbasid libraries of Baghdad, his story will reveal how caravanserai were more than mere rest stops. They were hubs of intelligence, diplomacy, and even subterfuge. Dawn preparations and hidden message speed the time the first call to prayer drifts faintly on the breeze. Ahmad is already alert. He has slept sparingly in uneasy guest resting only 2 hours on the gilded pallet he rented. Under his woolen tunic, he carries a small leather pouch filled not with coins, but with neatly folded slips of bark paper. These are his true wealth tonight. Updates on political unrest in the eastern provinces, reports from Persian governors, and coded observations on the silk tax rates imposed by the Tang governor in Chang'an. He rises quietly and moves toward the well house. There, he draws a leather bucket of water, pours a small portion into his cupped hands, and splashes his face. Cold water trembles on his eyelashes. He dips a cloth into the well again and wipes his saddle straps, removing the fine dessert dust that could chafe his shoulders on the road. Nearby, a young spice trader from Kashgar arranges her wooden chest yellow turmeric, crimson saffron, and pale caraway before extinguishing her lantern for a final rest. Almond greets her in a low voice. "Peace be upon you." She nods, her face still shadowed by sleep. From the alcoves above, the late-arriving weaver from Samarkand stirs, wrapping a felt blanket more tightly against the cold. He raises a single finger in acknowledgement to Almond, then settles back into darkness. These silent exchanges form the unsubtle morning ritual and spoken codes that bind traders from myriad lands. The caravanserais role in information networks caravanserai were vital nodes in an information network that crisscrossed vast territories, scholars, spies, and merchants like Almond all relied on these ends to exchange more than goods. Scribes and Abbasid courts prized intelligence gathered from passing caravans, news of rebellions along the Oxus, shifts in tax levies near Merv, or rumors of fresh coinage being minted in Samarkand. Almond's trade in manuscripts made him both a valuable source and a potential target. He approaches the small courtyard alcove, reserved for official correspondence, a raised wooden shelf. Beneath a faded inscription in Kuffic script, "Here, caravan sheriffs deposited sealed messages for onward delivery." Almond presses 3 slim bark scrolls into the sheriff's hand under the cover of pre-dawn gloom, each sealed with blinking wax and scented lightly with frankincense to deter tampering. The sheriff tucks the scrolls into a linen pouch attached to his belt and inclines his head. They'll travel tomorrow with the Anatolian silk merchant. He murmurs, "Safe journey." Almond bows and steps back, knowing these messages may influence decisions of governors far more powerful than any caravan emir. Water politics and the cistern ceremony before setting out. Almond must address another precious resource, water. In the desert, water equal life itself, and the caravans are as well fed by an underground channel from a distant oasis proved its greatest asset. Yet even here, the water supply was rationed. Each trader received a bucket per camel and 1 bucket for personal use. To maintain fairness, the inn's eunuch overseers conducted the cistern ceremony each morning at sunrise. Traders gather in a semicircle around the well. A senior eunuch pours a handful of purified sand into the well and ancient tribute to the guardian spirits said to inhabit subterranean waters. He recites an invocation, "O spirit of the hidden spring, bless our journey with safe drinking, flow unmired by greed or sting." Once the prayer ends, the eunuch dips his ladle into the well and offers a drop of water to the nearest trader, who in turn offers water to the next. This chain continues until each has tasted the blessed drop. Only then may traders draw their allotted water. Alma tastes the water's crisp purity and understated reassurance and then fills his 2 buckets, careful not to overreach, for infractions were met with a fine of 5 copper coins or, in repeated cases, expulsion to the desert. A midday threat. Bandits and the guard protocol the sun climbs swiftly, and by mid-morning the courtyard brightens. walls turning from dusty ochre to a harsh pale. Almond secures his manuscripts in a leather satchel and moves toward the southern gate, where the guards stand vigilant. Each wears a conical helmet of boiled leather and carries a small round shield. Slung across his back, their spears, tipped in iron, rest at their sides. At the first sign of movement outside, 3 riders appearing as specks on the horizon. The guards sound the 2 blows warning. 1 horn blast to alert traders to remount. The blast 2 signal a full lockdown. Within moments, the southern gate's inner doors grind shut, and wooden bars slide into grooves from within. The courtyard transforms from an open haven to a sealed fortress. Trading halts. Camels shuffle anxiously. Almond presses himself against the wall near the prayer niche, hand on the satchel's cover. Outside, you hear the hoof beats approach. The guards open a narrow firing slit in the gate's wooden frame, peer out, then close it without a word. A lull follows. Then the horn sounds once alert only. A lone rider, breathless and dust-covered, is admitted after presenting a sealed letter from the next oasis's caravanserai warned of bandit. Movements to the north dot inside. The letter is read aloud. 5 riders armed with javelins and ropes. They target manuscripts and silks. Advise caution. At this, the eunuch overseers convene an impromptu council in the guardhouse. Water buckets are allocated to the guards' horses. A small party of 6 trader silk merchants, spice traders, and Almond agree to form an armed escort to the next inn, supplementing the caravan security, gathering supplies and forming. Allian sessiocating the threat, Almond seeks practical preparations. He lends one of his buckets of water to a silk merchant whose camel has gone lame, and borrows a light iron dagger from the spice trader. In return, he shares his ration of flatbread baked in the courtyard oven this morning with just enough salt, and ghee to sustain them. The group convenes in the prayer niche's shadow, where they distribute rolls. 2 men will walk at the front to scout, 2 at the rear to signal danger, and 2 in the center to protect the party's most valuable cargo Almond's manuscripts and the scarce spices. The guards provide 3 crude but serviceable shields from a storage rack, oiled wood, with an iron rim. They assign the shields to the front scouts. This spontaneous alliance born of necessity mirrors the larger Silk Road reality. Traders from diverse regions banded together, sharing resources and skills to navigate threats. A merchant from Bach offers his camel's saddlebag as a makeshift pack for extra water and dry dates. A Persian carpet dealer contributes a length of woven silk to wrap delicate jars, providing both padding and concealment. Departing into the dessert heat beat. Midday, the courtyard gates open again with a deep groan. The horn's all-clear echoes, and the party emerges into a haze of heat. The desert sun beats down on red-brown dunes that ripple toward the horizon. Ahead lies a 2-day stretch to the next, and its walls barely visible in the shimmering distance. You mount your own camel and join Ahmad's party as it moves in unison. The caravanserai's walls recede, and the wind kicks up sandy moats that swirl around your ankles. The lead scout signals a water stop at a small rocky outcrop and informal. Addition to the route, unlikely to appear on any official map. Traders spill off their mounts, fill leather bottles, and mop sweat from their foreheads. Amid this indispensable stop, Almond tucks his manuscripts into the silk wrapping, breathes in the cool shade beneath a solitary acacia, and reflects on the hidden role these play in sustaining not just bodies, but the flow of information, goods, and alliances across harsh landscapes. Hospitality beyond shelter back in the caravanserai's courtyard. Fresh riders replace the bandit scare with new faces, a troupe of Tatar musicians. Their dudaks and frame drums bringing a plaintive melody to the night. Hospitality extended naturally to them, a small pouch of dates, a corner of the oven's warmth, and an invite to perform beside the well. The musicians' tunes rose into the vaulted alcoves, weaving with the rustle of blankets and the distant laughter of traders sharing news. Almond, catching a lull between songs, struck up a conversation with one musician, a lute player named Cameron, who had once traveled through the steppes of Mongolia and traded with Uyghur merchants. Through stories, they pieced together an oral map of trading routes, noting which passes remained open despite seasonal snows, which oases were drying up, and where the next end might be forced to close due to tribal conflicts. In these moments of shared warmth and music, you sensed that caravanserai offered far more than bunk space. They forged cultural exchanges that textbooks seldom record. A single courtyard concert could introduce Persian melodies to Turkic audiences, inspiring new song forms when the musicians returned home. The unresolved path ahead as you settle in a vaulted alcove. For your second night in this hidden inn, you gaze at the lantern-lit courtyard in quiet awe. You think of Ahmad's manuscripts destined for Baghdad, how they carry not only poetic verses, but also the strategic intelligence that shapes empires. You remember the morning sacred cistern ceremony, the midday bandit alert, and the spontaneous alliance that enabled safe passage through hostile terrain. You feel the pulse of countless travelers, their hopes, their bargains, their fears entwined with your own. But beyond these walls lies an uncertain stretch of desert, where the next caravanserai may be shuttered, water wells dry, or travel skirmishes might erupt without warning. Almond must decide whether to press onward at first light or wait a day, while scouts verify that the route ahead remains open. In the shifting sands of the Silk Road, every choice carries weight, and every inn, no matter how hidden or remote, plays a vital role in the grand currents of commerce and culture. Before dawn's first light, you wake to the faint rumble of camels rising as one. Lanterns still glow in each vaulted alcove, though their flames flicker with the deepening cold. You hoist yourself from your felted pallet and step into the courtyard. The flagstones cool beneath your feet. In the dim half-light, you see Almond, Ibn Farik, standing beside the well, his silhouette framed by the painted inscriptions above. He holds a folded bark scroll, the morning's final intelligence report sealed, and ready for the caravan sheriffs who will depart at sunrise. Today, he will decide whether to press on or linger, but the caravanserai's next roll awaits as witness to his choice. 1. Weighing risk and a reward, Ahmad strides to the guardhouse, where the eunuch overseers stand at attention, their clipped hair and white wrappers marking their neutrality. The senior overseer and the head guard step forward, offering him thimblefuls of honey tea made from the day's first draw of well water. Almond accepts, savoring the warmth as he recounts the bandit reports. The eunuch oversees the ledger digits, inscribed in charcoal on camel-hide parchment, recording every traveler's departure time, destination, and known companions. 5 riders from Samarkand will leave with you. The overseer announces they carry clay ware and require escort. Almond nods. An escort is essential. He confers with his ragtag band spice traders, silk merchants, and a young carpet dealer, each bearing water skins and sharpened daggers. They meet beneath the prayer niche, offering a silent prayer to the well spirits before forming their circle. Almond breaks the quiet. We go now. Better to confront risk with morning's clarity than linger in fear. His companions murmur assent. The decision is made. They will depart at first light, following the southern track past a minor oasis before reaching the next and into. Day's time point to the final morning rituals as the eastern sky blushes with dawn. The caravanserai stirs. Bakers stoke the courtyard oven, placing fresh loaves of barley bread on its stone ledge. A pot of lentils simmers in a corner, its aromatic steam curling toward the vaulted arches. The inn's lantern bearers to apprentices move through the alcoves, rekindling each lamp's wick and wiping soot from the glass. Almond visits the latrine area once more, not out of necessity, but habit. The wooden bench under the reeds has hosted the private business of countless travelers. Here he gathers his thoughts. He withdraws a small leather-bound copy of a Sufi poem he carries for solace, verse on humility and surrender, and reads a few lines aloud. Like water finds its hidden ways, so wisdom flows through silent days. He tucks the poem into an inside pocket before stepping back into the courtyard, where mules crouch and camels knelt in readiness. The head guard claps softly twice, an unspoken signal that the gates will open. Traders stow blankets, secure cargo, and mount beasts whose growling stomachs show anticipation for the journey's next leg. Asters 3. Opening the grotesque wooden bars slide free of the gate's inner frame, and the massive doors swing open with a slow groan. Outside, the desert air is pale gold, the dunes etched with shadows. The eunuch overseers bid farewell with respectful inclinations of the head. Almond gathers his satchel, adjusting the silk-wrapped manuscripts so they won't catch at the edges, and leads his party into the courtyard's threshold. You linger a moment, breathing in the courtyard scents, the earthy tang of baked loaves, the faint musk of camels' hair blankets, the slight smoke of lanolin in the lantern wicks. Guards close the gates behind you, and you watch the red brick walls receive walls that have sheltered travelers for generations. Walls that will soon yawn open again for the next weary caravan for. Through the shifting sand silos settle into your saddle as the caravan moves away, the camel's hooves stirring sand and dust motes rising in columns. The caravan's arrive fades behind, a solitary fortress in an ocean of dunes. Almond's party falls into formation, lead scouts riding forward, rear guards bringing up the stragglers, and Almond's manuscripts cradled at the caravan's heart. The day heats swiftly. They pause at the first rocky outcrop, where scouts check the path for fresh footprints. A short diversion skirts a dune field where loose sand could trip laden camels. After midday, they reach a dried riverbed and natural ford where they rest and refill water skins from a brackish spring. Tense glances pass among the traders. Each drop of water here has value beyond measure. They ration carefully. 5. The next caravans arrive on the horizon on the afternoon of the second day. Just as the sun dips toward the horizon in a fiery arc, the party crests a small ridge. Below, half buried in sand, you glimpse another caravanserai, walls weathered to a pale ochre, its gate ajar. A plume of smoke drifts skyward from the courtyard oven's chimney. Relief spreads through the caravan. Another haven stands ready. Almond slows his camel, shading his eyes against the low sun. He sees a guard wave from the parapet. The caravan shifts to single file and descends into the courtyard, greeted with the same efficiency of tokens and water rations. Once more, the never-changing ritual repeats. Parchments verified, water drawn, bedding rented, and stories exchanged. 6. Reflections on the web of comforters. You lean against the cool wall of the new courtyard, watching traders greet friends and swap news. You consider the chain of caravanserais stretching like pearls along the Silk Road. Each allows for rest, but more importantly, they knit distant lands together through the hush of dripping water, the steady glow of lanterns, and the whispered confidences of traders. You think of Almond's manuscripts en route to Baghdad, of the bandit alert that forged an alliance, of the morning ceremonies that sanctified water access. You imagine the mosaic of voices that rose under these vaults: Persian ambassadors, Jaeger diplomats, Bedouin poets, and Sogdian scribes. Here, social conventions transcended borders, the simple courtesy of offering water, the shared respect for property, the mutual reliance on imperial seals to guarantee safety. 7. The caravanserie's legacy in time. Many of these inns decayed overrun by shifting dunes, abandoned as roads altered by politics or repurposed for local villages. Yet their memory endures in surviving architecture, in the strategies of desert survival they encapsulated, and in the indelible mark they left on cross-cultural exchange. Modern highways may follow similar routes, their rest stops stocked with convenience stores rather than ovens of sourdough or wells sculpted by ancient masons. Still, the principle remains. Networks thrive when travelers find reliable shelter, be it brick and mud or concrete and air conditioning. As you prepare for sleep in the second courtyard, your palm on a smooth iron stud of a resting alcove, you recognize that the Silk Road's true foundation was not merely roads carved across landscapes, but the promise of warm bread, cool water, and safe harbor provided night after night. Hundreds of miles, dozens of inns, countless travelers died. Beyond history to modern echoes, let your thoughts drift beyond these walls. Consider today's systems logistics hubs, international airports, digital networks all echoing the same need, reliable nodes to support continuous journeys. The strategies of medieval innkeepers: fair rationing, shared information, simple hospitality offer lessons from modern supply chains and community building. Perhaps the next time you pause at a highway rest area or connect through an online forum, you'll glimpse a faint reflection of those silent courtyards in the desert. Benedict's neighboring voyages to Portuguese traders since the late afternoon. Sun bleeds gold across the lagoon's mirrored surface. You stand on the shore of Ujao, watching Obisizu's canoe glide toward the canoe landing. The vessel carries not just palm oil and muskets, but the weight of shifting power dynamics between Benin City, coastal chiefs, and European traders. In Section 1, you followed Obisu from the palm-thatched shrines of Ujao to the decks of Portuguese caravels, and back. Now, you will witness how these voyages reverberate through local politics, forge new treaties, and spark rivalries among coastal polities seeking advantage in this burgeoning Atlantic network. 1. A royal audience in Benin City a week after Obisizu's return. A royal messenger arrives in Ujao bearing a bronze bell stamped with the Oba's crest. The token summons Obisu to Benin City for an audience with the Ayas, the Oba's prime minister. He travels overland in a smaller canoe up the intricate waterways, accompanied by Tawari traders turned allies from his last voyage. As dusk settles, they slip beneath the scarlet gates of the capital's eastern harbor. The city's clay walls glowing in the TO or CHLIGHT dot in the candlelit audience chamber. The Ayah sits behind a low ebony desk, flanked by ivory-trimmed masks of past Obas. Obisu kneels on a woven mat and presents his report, the precise number of muskets delivered, the terms secured with Fernandez, the barter of cooking pots at the Ijebu village, and the brief storm delay. He offers a silver inlaid box containing coral beads acquired in trade, a symbol of loyalty to the crown. The Ayas examines each detail with hawk-like attentiveness. He nods appreciatively at the barter for cooking pots. Practical gifts bind, hearts as surely as gold. He inquires about the quality of the matchlocks. Were their locks smooth? Did the flash pans hold powder in damp conditions? Obisu demonstrates by partially disassembling one in the torch's glow, revealing finely fitted parts. The Ayas taps its buttstock and remarks, "This craftsmanship will serve our war chiefs well." Yet the Ayas' expression darkens when Obisu mentions the improvised cowrie shell bracelets used as amulets against shark attacks. A charming innovation, he says dryly, but do not let ritual trappings compromise discipline. Some in the court whisper that such embellishments could distract soldiers, though others admire coastal ingenuity. The eyes concludes, "Your diplomacy and initiative are commendable. I now grant you the title of Oba's envoy to the coast. Continue these voyages, but remember Benin's authority must underlie every gift exchanged." Obisu bows deeply, feeling the weight of new expectations. He departs with a royal Paysan ivory badge granting him safe conduct among provincials and coastal chiefs alike. This badge is more than decoration. It signifies that his missions now carry state sanction, and any vessel neglecting his summons risks royal displeasure. 2. Coastal rivalries and shifting alliances in the return voyage to Ujo, Obisu senses a subtle shift in his crew's demeanor. The title of envoy elevates him beyond a mere trader, yet coastal chiefs, ever wary of Benin's encroachment, view him with renewed suspicion. In Wari, Itsekiri leaders huddle in reed-walled meeting houses, debating whether Obisizu's missions advance their own interests or simply curry favor with the Oba. To their detriment, Itsekiri Chief Alamai confronts Obisu on the pier. "Your missions bring muskets and beads, yes, but at what cost to our autonomy? Do not mistake Benin's badge for friendship." Obisu replies respectfully, emphasizing that Benin's protection of coastal routes also shields Itsekiri markets from Ejebu. Raids still. Alamai's guarded tone underscores an uneasy truth. Each voyage tightens Benin's grip on trade. While coastal polities jockey for leverage. Meanwhile, in Ejebu Ode, traders hear news of Obisizu's royal elevation and fear their own initiative may be overshadowed. A local canoe commander, Ogun Makin, wagers that he can sail west and negotiate directly with the Portuguese bypassing Obisizu's intermediary role. If successful, Ogun Makin might claim his own envoy status, fracturing the unity of coastal diplomacy and threatening Benin's authority. 3. The Ejebu expedition faces storm and diplomacydermen to match Obisizu's success. Ogun Makin assembles a flotilla of 3 canoes, packed with palm oil, yams, and a diplomatic gift, a finely woven cloth embroidered with Ejebu symbols. He hopes to trade this directly for muskets and beads. But lacking Obisizu's pesa, Ogun Makin cannot rely on Benin's protected anchorages. On the 17th day of the monsoon, Ogun Makin's fleet reaches Forcados Creek, where a single Portuguese caravel, the São Pedro, hovers offshore. Without official sanction, the caravel's captain Farnesio hesitates. He examines Ogun Makin's gift cloth and asks for a royal letter from Benin City. Ogun Makin produces a hastily scrawled missive from a minor chief, insufficient to persuade Farnesio of his authority. The captain demands a personal gift of 2 barrels of Portugal's prized Madeira wine and item. Ogun Makin cannot procure Dot as negotiation stall. Dark clouds gather. A tropical squall sneaks up the creek, churning the shallow waters. The captain refuses to risk sending the longboat amid the storm. Ogun Makin's crew watches helplessly as the canoe mast creaks, then cracks under sudden gusts. Yams and palm oil spill into the muddy channel. The Ejebu flotilla retreats, narrowly escaping capsizing. Humiliated, Ogun Makin returns to Ejebu Ode bearing empty hands and a tattered cloth. Rumors of his failure spread quickly. Coastal elders murmur that only with Benin's backing can one secure reliable trade with Europeans. Ogun Makin's misadventure validates Obisizu's envoy status and underscores how precarious independent initiatives remain. Asterisk 4. Obisizu's second voyage, intelligence and influence back in Ujo. Obisu convenes his captains beneath the stilted council hall. He shares Ogun Makin's tale as cautionary example. Gifts alone do not open foreign holdfasts. Royal sanction and steadfast alliances sustain our ventures. He outlines plans for his next voyage. He will carry not only trade goods, but intelligence gleaned from coastal chiefs' reports of shifting allegiances among the Portuguese. plans for new forts at nearby islands, and rumors of a rival African kingdom seeking trade rights. This time, Obisu negotiates with the Portuguese captains before leaving Ujao. He provides letters of introduction to both the Nossa Senhora d'Agraca and the São Pedro, ensuring he can dock at multiple anchorages. He also organizes a joint flotilla with traders from Orhiamwin and Wari, projecting unity and deterring European captains from playing captains of individuals against one another. 5. Tactical diplomacy at Akpata Island. Akpata Island lies midway between Ujao and Forcados, a strategic outpost rumored to be eyed by the Portuguese. For a small stockade, Obisu lands his flotilla on the island's mangrove fringed shore. There, he meets Portuguese surveyors mapping the creek's bends. He greets them with ritual offerings, cola nuts, a brass bell from Ben & Smith's, and a detailed map of local sandbars information only Ujo's navigators possess. In return, the Portuguese agree to maintain a protected landing at Akpata for Ujo's canoes, an informal concession replacing the failed independent overtures by Ogunmakian. Obisu secures to iron swivel gun small cannons suited for canoe defense, in exchange for a promise that Ujo will provide local rations to any Portuguese garrison establishing itself. This arrangement deepens coastal dependency on Benedict's envoy and sets a precedent. European powers will now negotiate collectively with Benedict's envoys, rather than coastal chiefs independently. 6. The return and the rippling consequence. Supan Obisi's safe return to Ujao. The flotilla's canoes slide ashore beneath a procession of drumming villagers, chiefs of Ujao, Orhiamwin, and Wari attend to greet the envoy, each bringing tribute of yams, smoked fish, or carved ivory. Obisu presents the swivel guns and the stock and concession in a sealed message for the eyes, confirming his success in preserving coastal prerogatives. As word spreads among coastal polities, leaders recognize the lessons. First, that Benedict's envoy wields influence surpassing any individual chief. Second, that unity under the Oba's banner secures better terms with Europeans than factional competition. Many chiefs begin to seek Benedict's authorization for their own trading missions, reinforcing the Oba's hegemony over the Delta's commerce. 7. Unresolved tides of influence sit by the lagoon's edge, gazing at the canoe port where goods flow inward and outward beneath the bent palms. Obisi's voyages have consolidated Benedict's control, elevated his own status, and steered Portuguese interactions toward centralized diplomacy. Yet undercurrents remain. Ogunmakian's wounded pride, whispers of coastal alliances with rival European powers, and the growing local dependence on imported firearms across the Delta. Coastal towns debate whether to ratify Benedict's envoy system or seek direct alliances with Elmina and Sao Tome on the Gold Coast. Portuguese captains, emboldened by cannons and map knowledge, may soon demand land concessions, and inland, the Oba's reliance on firearms could spark conflicts that reshape the region's balance. As twilight settles on this riverine crossroads, you wonder, what next currents will carry the envoy's canoe? Will coastal chiefs find new partners to challenge Benedict's influence? Or will a rival African kingdom rise to broker European trade on equal terms? And most crucially, when firearms and forts multiply along these shores, what fate awaits the delicate networks forged in canoes and sealed with cola dust? You find yourself on the muddy banks of the Batabinan at dawn, where the tides carry the scent of brackish mangroves and the distant cry of hornbills. In the late 1490s, nearly a decade after Portuguese caravels first rounded the Cape of Good Hope, a new chapter of trade was unfolding along West Africa's coast. It was no longer just Benin City's royal fleet that engaged with Europeans. Rather, smaller riverine polities Ujo, Ejebu, Wari, and more sent their own trading canoes westward to rendezvous with Portuguese captains anchored offshore. These neighboring voyages would reshape regional commerce, diplomacy, and power balances in ways as subtle as they were profound. Today, you will accompany Obisu of Ejebo, a seasoned canoe commander, and witness how these humble expedit Ions navigated unfamiliar winds, cultural rituals, and diplomatic gambits that echoed far beyond the palm-fringed shore, preparing for passage, provisions, and porters in Ujo, a town built on stilts above the lagoon. Obisu stands on a wooden jetty at first light, his caravana sleek. Single-trunk canoe carved from Morocco timbers is freighted with crates of palm oil amphory, sacks of cola nuts, and finely woven indigo cloth. A dozen paddlers, lean men seasoned by river travel, adjust their raffia, head wraps, and steady their wooden paddles. Alongside them bustle porters carrying baskets of smoked fish and yams to provision both crew. At potential Portuguese guests, Obisizu's first ritual is to visit the small shrine of Olokin, god of the sea and mysteries. A diviner sprinkles cola dust into a miniature oblong well of water and reads the ripples. If the dust fans outward in concentric circles, the voyage will prosper. If it drifts upstream or settles in a lopsided clump, danger lies ahead. Today, the cola forms a perfect ring, and the diviner murmurs, "The sea's heart is true. You will find safe passage." Obisu tosses a handful of grated camwood into the offering bowl, whispers a prayer, and signals his crew to embark. He issues final instructions. Each paddler must wear a fresh loop of cowrie shells around his wrist, tokens against shark attacks, and each stack of palm oil jars must be lashed twice around with braided palm fiber rope. Traders from Ojo and Orhianwin arriving to exchange yams for glass beads. Join as porters for this leg, strengthening Ujo's hand in coastal alliances. The final touch, Obisizu's own diplomatic gift, a carved ivory comb in a red-dyed leather. Pouch for Captain Mateus Fernandez of the Portuguese caravel Nossa Senhora da Graça. Following the monsoon winds be mid-morning, the crew hoists a lightweight sail of bamboo reed matting. They leave behind the twisting estuaries of the Niger's delta and catch the southwest monsoon that sweeps along the Gulf of Guinea from June through September. Under these winds, a canoe can cover up to 50 nautical miles in a single day if currents hold and reefs are avoided. Obisu guides his men in a rhythm passed down through generations, a slow paddle song punctuated by halting calls in the Jebu dialect, alternating strokes to steer around shifting sandbars. They pass fishing villages, finger-thin extensions of mangroves where nets hung to dry, women in colorful wrappers sorting shells, and children splashing in shallow pools. Each night, they beach the canoe on a sloping bank, erect a small fire, pit of coals, and sleep under woven mats to guard against insects and midges drawn by the river's moisture. Along the way, Obisu exchanges news with other coastal captains. A small flotilla from Wari under its Sekiri leader Ofalo shares word of fresh Portuguese. Stockpiles of copper bracelets and Venetian glass beads at Forcados Creek. Traders murmur that these goods could fetch twice their weight in land if one dared risk the long trek across narrowly patrolled waterways. Obisu notes the news. The balance of opportunity is shifting daily, and timely information is as precious as any cargo. First encounters with the caravels in the fifth day. The silhouette of the Portuguese caravels emerges on the horizon. The São Jorge and the Nossa Senhora da Graça. Their white sails swell like distant clouds against an azure sky. Obisu orders the sail furled and the paddles lashed, bringing the canoe within hailing distance. Portuguese sailors peer out from the forecastle, hands shading their brows. A longboat is lowered, oars churning the green-blue waters, and approaches. With a wary curiosity, Obisu presents his diplomatic comb and a letter sealed with the Oba of Benin's red wax emblem, an invitation to deepen trade and ensure Benin's security on the coast. The longboat's oarsman, Mateus Fernandez himself according to local rumor, accepts the gift with polite ceremony, running his fingers over the comb's fine teeth and nodding solemnly. Each gesture is performed with acute awareness. For Europeans, local good will pay dividends in faster cargo handling and safer anchorage. For coastal traders, it meant reliable access to coveted imports like muskets and small iron hinges. The longboat returns to the caravels, and through a translator, both sides conduct a swift exchange. Palm oil for glass beads, cola nuts for copper, manillas, and 2 crates of indigo cloth for a shipment of iron hinges. Obisu negotiates each tally on a bronze scale borrowed from the Sao-Jorge. Watching the weights dip and rise, he secures a promise of early delivery of muskets and item. The Oba desires to cement his military edge over rival polities. Rituals of reciprocity is more than commerce, it is diplomacy. Obisu invites the longboat's crew to join a modest ash almond meal on the beach, flat rice cakes baked under embers, smoked fish spiced with native pepper, and thin goat's milk porridge. They eat with roasted dogwood spoons, sharing fish bones over the sand. As the sun dips, the Portuguese share dried figs and small bottles of imported wine, an expensive rarity to coastal tongues. Under the cooking fire's glow, and Itsekiri, Elder chants a short verse in Niger Congo melody, invoking Orombi, the river spirit of hospitality. Mateus Fernandez raises his wine vial in a toast to safe voyages and lasting friendship. Obisu replies in kind, lifting a wooden bowl of palm wine. 2 shared fortunes under the same sun. This ceremonial reciprocity seals trust. Neither side departs empty-handed nor uninstructed in the complexities of each other's world. Storm clouds and uncertain tides. Next morning, skies royal with heavy clouds, a sudden squall. Typical of the monsoon season, coastal canoes, lacking heavy ballast and high freeboard, risk capsizing in following seas. Obisu orders his men to beach on a rocky punt ahead of schedule. They shelter the canoe under thatched mats and tend the cargo beneath crabgrass thickets. Between raindrops, they rig palm leaf awnings over their supplies to keep palm oil from spoiling and iron hinges from rusting. While they wait, Obisu inspects the small wooden crates from Benin's blacksmiths. Bronze bells meant for the Oba's ancestral altars, each stamped with iconic motifs. He notes minor cracks, perhaps from damp sea air, and decides they must be ray-oiled before delivery. He deputizes a pair of apprentices to heat palm oil over the still glowing embers and brush each bell carefully, restoring them to deep golden luster. The storm lasts a day's enough time for trading parties upriver to press claims on passing canoes. Demanding port duties beyond the Oba's decree, Obisu dispatches a runner and agile boy named Hugo to negotiate with the local chief, reminding him of royal envoys and the Oba's displeasure at unofficial fees. Hugo returns with a note carved on a reed slip, promising safe passage once the squall clears, return voyage, and cultural crossroads when the storm abates. The canoe drifts out to meet the caravels again. Obisu receives his promised musket 6. Matchlocks with polished walnut stocks each exchanged for copper manillas. He inspects the lock mechanisms, tests the flash pan and serpentine, and deems them serviceable for Benin's war chiefs. On the return leg, the northeast monsoon and tidal currents push the canoe eastward at greater speed. Obisu plans an unscheduled stop at an Ijebu fishing village, where coastal tuna harvesters are willing to barter several dried fish for metal cooking pots, an item highly prized inland. At dusk, he docks his canoe at a rickety wooden pier and completes a brisk barter, 10 fish for 2 iron cauldrons. each etched with simple geometric patterns by local smiths. That night, villagers light torch fires of palm fronds and gather on the shore to greet the canoe's return. They serenade Obisizu's crew with chants in Songo folk meter, and women dance under pandanus leaf torches. Obisu shares some matchlock, oil an unexpected gift that astonishes the villagers and agrees to leave one cauldron behind. As a token of goodwill, weaving new alliance back in Ujo, Obisu presents his diplomatic report to the eyes of Benin City by messenger. He details the negotiated muskets, the storm's delays, the unplanned barters, and the reciprocal gifts. The eyes, impressed by Obisizu's deft navigation of multiple coastal jurisdictions, rewards him with a carved ivory comb for his own use, stamped with the Oba's crest. The outcomes ripple outward. The Obas where chiefs receive fresh firearms. Coastal communities gain metal cookware, and European traders secure slender trade routes less subject to interference by coastal chiefs. Meanwhile, coastal canoe captains refine their own diplomatic protocols, blending local rituals of reciprocity with European gift exchange practices, thus birthing a hybrid culture of commerce that would endure for decades. Unresolved currents as dust falls on another canoe landing. You imagine the unseen stories carried by these voyages, the whispered intelligence shared in coded bark messages, the rivalries softened over hearth fires, the small bribes disguised as gifts, and the shifting allegiances between inland Oba and coastal chiefs. How many more such voyages unfolded, each a thread in the tapestry of cross-cultural exchange? And what are the larger forces at play? The creeping establishment of European forts, the eventual demands for land concessions, the silent spread of new diseases aboard caravels, the shifting tides of power when matchlock muskets entered local conflicts. Each return voyage carried more than goods, it carried questions yet to be answered, alliances yet to be tested, and futures yet to be written. Dawn unfolds in a pale wash of gold over Ujo's lagoon, and you stand again on its muddy banks, watching as Obisizu's canoe returns from its third voyage under the title of the Oba's envoy to the coast. The vessel glides through mist-shrouded waters, its polished hull reflecting the first light. With him are the swivel guns from Akpata Island's small bronze cannons, once intended for naval defense, and the latest freight, crates of Portuguese hinges, destined for palace door workshops, brass bells stamped with foreign crests and fine Venetian glass beads. Today's chapter will carry you from this jubilant homecoming to the battlegrounds of influence that tested Benin's coastal hegemony, and ultimately show how the envoy's careful diplomacy foreshadowed seismic shifts in West African politics. 1. A triumphant procession and new responsibilities lagoons read French key thrums with activity. Drums beat in irregular patterns as villagers line the wooden walkways, cheering the envoy's return. Obisu steps ashore, pausing to receive homage from lesser canoe captains among them. The humbled Ogun make-in, chiefs bearing carved ivory, tusks and baskets of dried fish welcome him, presenting him with palm wine gourd cups. Obisu accepts each with a courteous nod, but in his heart, he measures the fine line between gratitude and gratitude's obligation. He dons the ivory peza given by the eyes, and its emblem catches the sun. This badge now marks him as the ultimate authority in coastal negotiations, yet it also binds him to the Oba's mandates. He carries letters from the Obanu directives that Obisu must deliver discreetly. To each coastal chief, to Ajebu Ode, reinforced taxation agreements on palm oil exports. To Wari, coordinate joint patrols against itinerant slave raiders. To Orhiamwin, supervise the replacement of worn ropes in all coastal canoes. Obisu reads these missives aloud to assembled canoe captains under the stilted council hall. making sure that each understands both privilege and duty. When he finishes, a hush falls then one by one. Captains bow. It's a silent testament. Benen's authority now pulses through the delta's waterways. As surely as the tides themselves dot to, coastal councils and iron law of gifts over the next fortnight, Obisu convenes 3 coastal councils at Ijebu-Ode, Wari, and Orhian to formalize the Oba's directives. In each council, tradition blends with imported protocol. At Ijebu-Ode, in a reed-walled pavilion scented with cola, smoke, Obisu presides alongside Chief Ogunwale, the Ijebu paramount. They exchange the first gifts. A brass swivel gun is presented to Ogunwale's eldest son in recognition of his support in deterring bandits. In return, Ogunwale offers a 5-year exemption on canoe landing fees. For all Ujo vessels, a gesture that underscores how diplomacy often meant calibrated reciprocity. At Wari, under a canopy of mangrove branches, Obisu negotiates joint patrol logistics with Chief Almond. He offers powdered camwood and iron cooking pots, simple, yet coveted in exchange for Wari's commitment to escort coastal canoes beyond pirate-infested creeks. The terms are set in palm leaf ledgers and sealed with red wax stamps. At Orhian. In a moment of tension, local leaders challenge Obisizu's authority to dictate rope standards, arguing that coastal knowledge should prevail. Obisu counters with tangible evidence. He demonstrates how freight sheaves once cost several vessels their entire cargo in rough seas. He then gives a bale of freshly woven Senate rope, stronger than any they had seen. Humility and utility win the day, and the chief's consent. These councils affirm that the iron law of gifts dictates politics. Power flows to those who control both the gifts and the expectations they engender. Obisizu's careful allocations and his willingness to serve as Benen's executing arm cement the Oba's influence across watery borders. 3. The first test. Illage raids and the limits of envoy power. Despite these successes, the envoy's authority faces its sternest test, where word arrives of renewed Illage raids on Ujo's trading networks. Illage canoes, led by an ambitious, unscrupulous chief, have been abducting fishermen, exacting heavy port duties, and threatening to reroute trade through rival towns. Obisu convenes an emergency council back in Ujo. Parchments rustle as eunuch overseers read aloud. Eyewitness reports. Raids have captured at least 20 men on the northern approaches. Illage forces demand tribute and cowries before allowing canoes to pass. Rumors hint that Illage may be trading informally with Portuguese smugglers for firearms. The crisis presents Obisu with a dilemma. Does he escalate militarily, dispatching war chiefs with matchlocks to intimidate the Illage? Or does he pursue further negotiations, risking lost face if talks fail? He decides on a mixed approach first. He issues a royal strike order. 6 muskets will be deployed to Ujo's riverine militia for deterrence. Next, he sends emissaries to senior traders and a decorated warrior to parley with the Illage chief, offering technical assistance in building stronger canoes in exchange for ending raids. The Illage chief, at first enraged by the Oba's assertion of authority, examines the musket's barrels and tentatively agrees to a temporary truce his own men, eyeing the new weapons. With grudging admiration, this resolution exposes both the strength and fragility of Obisizu's position. Firearms and diplomacy combined can enforce order, but only if local chiefs perceive themselves as partners rather than subjects. For the arrival of a new European power just as the dust settles from the Illage episode, a fresh wind blows down the coast. News of a French caravel sighted near Lagos, whose captain seeks to establish trading ties along alternate routes. Coastal chiefs whisper anxiously, Could this newcomer undermine Benin's carefully managed monopoly? Would oaken-making be tempted to join French expeditions that promised higher prices for palm oil and ivory? Obisu sails to Lagos under a temporary flag of truce. He lands at the French vessel's longboat and meets Captain Pierre de Lormont. They exchange customary gifts. Obisu presents an ivory carving of the Oba. De Lormont offers rare French textiles and discussed terms in halting. Portuguese, local dialects, and gestures. De Lormont's proposal: direct purchases of palm oil at reduced rates, provided that Ujo's traders pay a small annual license fee to the French crown. Obisu listens carefully. He recognizes the pattern, history repeating itself as new European entrants vie for coastal favor. He counters with a graceful refusal: we honor only the Oba's sanction. Then he presents his ivory peza and displays Oba Ezegi's letter sealed bright in the sun, implicitly reminding de Lormont that trade without Benin's endorsement invites peril. The French captain, though disappointed, nods in understanding. Modern captains respect recognized sovereigns to protect their own ventures. Thus, Obisu preserves Benin's dominance even as new players attempt to carve out footholds. 5. The envoy's legacy, institutionalizing coastal diplomacy in the months that follow. Obisu translates his personal successes into institutional frameworks. Envoy's charter he drafts with the palace scribes, a formal charter outlining his rights to negotiate on behalf of the Oba letters that all coastal chiefs must honor. Maritime patrol network, building on the Illich truce. He organizes quarterly joint patrols among Ujo, Wari, and Orhianwin, funded by a small levy on coastal trade. Muslim traders from Kano lend skilled marked men to the militia, further bolstering security. Shared intelligence codex. He compiles Illich raid reports, Portuguese shipping logs, and weather patterns into a leather-bound codex, distributing copies to coastal capitals. This data-sharing network foreshadows modern intelligence alliances. Through these measures, what began as a series of ad hoc voyages becomes a durable system. Obisu's personal title will outlive his lifetime, institutionalizing the role of envoy to the coast, a critical bridge between Benin's imperial core and its distant maritime frontiers. 6. Reflection, power, commerce, and cultural syntheses. You stand in Ujo's lantern-lit harbor one final night. You watch canoes come and go beneath a sky strewn with stars. The rhythmic splash of paddles is as familiar as your own heartbeat. You recall the first voyage's simple exchanges of beads for oil and trace the journey's arc, from tentative gift-giving through storm and negotiation to the dawn of a structured coastal network under Benin's aegis. In Obisu's story, you see the nuanced interplay of diplomacy and force, how the Oba's authority was asserted through both gifts and matchlocks, local innovation and imperial reach. Coastal chiefs developed rituals, cowrie amulets, joint patrols while drawing on Benin's political might, cultural synthesis, Portuguese, French, and local customs intertwined, giving rise to hybrid ceremonies and shared language, information as currency, bark scrolls, ivory tokens, and codices of intelligence shaped regional strategy alongside silk and salt. These voyages did more than move goods. They wove new patterns of power and identity along West Africa's shores. The envoys craft balancing gifts, firearms, and formal decrees became a template for later African-European negotiations, far beyond the bite of Benin. 7. Modern resonances, legacy on the Gulf Coast today. The echoes of Obisu's diplomacy resonate in Nigeria's coastal cities, where port authorities consult with multinational corporations under formal treaties. The principles he pioneered: state-sanctioned envoys, joint security patrols, Shared intelligence underlie modern maritime law and economic partnerships. The swivel guns may be museum relics, but the patterns of alliance and negotiation he forged endure. As you prepared to leave Ujo, you notice the skeletal remains of a 16th century caravanserai on a nearby islet, a sign that trade routes once bent to Benin's will before currents changed. You think of how Obisizu's voyages bridged worlds, inland kingdoms and ocean-faring powers, merchant captains and sovereign courts. In the hush before your canoe sets off, consider this. How often today do we navigate similar crossroads bounds in local autonomy, with global influence, negotiating fairness in commerce, and melding varied traditions into new hybrids, Obisizus? The example reminds us that power is rarely simple, and that sustainable networks rely on respect, reciprocity, and the occasional swivel gun to uphold peace. The Oba's coronation ritual section, when you stand within the vast red earth walls of Benin City, in the dim light of early morning, when the air hangs heavy with humidity and the distant roar of palace, drums reverberates like a heartbeat. Today marks the beginning of a ritual older than any living memory, the coronation of the new Oba. A boy less than 2 decades past, Prince Yuka II has spent weeks in secluded preparation, and now his moment to join the ranks of divine kings is at hand. Over the next days, you will witness ceremonies equal parts sacred devotion, political, theater, and meticulous administration, each detail choreographed to weave ancestral power into the flesh and soul of a mortal man. The crown prince's seclusion weeks before the public rites began. Prince Yuka was led from his mother's apartments into the chamber of whispered prayers. Thick walls painted in ochre and red enclosed this hushed walls hung with carved ivory, tusks wrapped in crimson cloth and brass bells inscribed with ancestral symbols. Here, he fasted on plain yams boiled in water, his only companions a handful of celibate eunuchs whose purity symbolized, by their white wrappers ensured no profane influence, could touch the prince's spirit. Each dawn, a chief priest of Olokan entered the chamber, bearing a bowl of scented palm wine. He recited incantations in a sonorous Edo dialect by the water's hidden depths, and the river's steady course bind this blood to our ancestors' force. At midday, Prince's attendants daubed the walls with lines of white kaolin paste, creating invisible sigils to shield him from malevolent spirits. By night, he lay on a mat of woven raffia and goat hair, the air thick with the scent of burning canwood incense. Every moment of his seclusion was designed to sever earthly ties and ready his soul for divine investiture, the Yoba's first benediction bore. Sunrise on Coronation Day, the Eyoba Queen Mother Idia emerged barefoot from her own palace quarters. Her white velvet veil trailed behind her as she made her way through the southern gardens, heavy with medicinal herbs and palm fronds still glistening with dew. Courtiers parted before her in reverence, their whispers soft as the breeze. At the private shrine of the Eyoba, she carried a bronze staff topped with her late husband's ancestral visage's eyes stern, his presence protective. In the shrine's low light, she placed her staff upon a mat of palm leaves for brass bells, arranged for each cardinal direction, were struck in turn, producing a gentle, echoing chime. Each toll was followed by her whispered prayer, "May my son's reign echo with justice, tempered with mercy. May his voice carry our lineage's strength." When the bells fell silent, she picked up a small calabash of scented palm oil dyed with cola paste and anointed her son's forehead with a single drop. The act was both maternal blessing and solemn charge, signaling to the court that the new Oba's authority derived equally from his birthright and his mother's sacred sanction. The presentation of sacred regalia later, in the palm leaf pavilion before the palace courtyard. Guild masters approached with the first regalia items, each lay wrapped in layers of indigo. crimson and gold-dyed cloth hues that mirrored the palace's red walls and the sunlit canopy above. The ivory scepter emerged first, taller than the prince, its shaft carved with scenes of past obas and hunting party and diplomatic audience. Next, the coral-beaded crown was unwrapped a lattice of 1,000 tiny beads threaded by women whose songs accompanied each loop, invoking unity and royal blood. The ayah stepped forward, examining each glyph and engraving, comparing them to a parchment ledger bound in dark cloth. This ledger kept under lock and key recorded every repair, every minor modification, and every instance each piece was summoned for previous coronations. As he traced his fingers along a faded entry from 1604, the new Oba knelt, eyes downcast, awaiting the moment when these objects would transform him from prince to divine ruler. The ritual bath in the sacred lagoon be midday, the procession moved toward the sacred lagoon, a basin carved into the red earth banks, beneath the shade of ancient Iroko trees. Here, the prince disrobed and stepped into cool green waters, his attendants chanting psalms that blended Yoruba and Edo motifs for young women, chosen for their unblemished purity, poured water from calabash bowls. First the lagoon's water, then a spring from the northern hills, then water used in past coronations, and finally a stream mixed with crushed kola nuts. With each pour, a single brass bell tolled, once for renewal, twice for unity, thrice for wisdom, and a final toll for courage. The prince's eyes closed as droplets traced his brow like beads of memory, his past self washing away beneath ancestral witness. You could almost hear the water whisper secrets of kings who stood here centuries before. Anointment with palm oil and cola past emerging from the lagoon, dripping and radiant. Prince Yuka entered a nearby pavilion draped in fresh palm fronds. Courtiers presented trays of red-filtered palm oil and white cola paste. The ayahs took a small carved wooden ladle, scooped a measure of palm oil, and anointed the prince's crown, shoulders, and chest. Each stroke was deliberate, crown symbolizing the Oba's duty to uphold order, shoulders representing the weight of leadership, chest invoking compassion for subjects. Next, courtiers spread cola paste across his brow and forearms, scoring patterned spirals for continuity, zigzags for resilience, intersecting lines for justice. Each pattern summoned a specific ancestral power whispered in the palace's secret registers. The crowning in the great hall in the late afternoon glow. The final act unfolded in the great hall of the Oba's audience chamber. Its high ceiling, of carved palm wood and lofty rafters, cast intricate shadows across benches of ebony and ivory. On the central dais stood a leopard fur cushion. Before a low platform, its steps polished to a deep brown. Eunuchs carried a footstool woven from palm fibers, placing it before the dais. Abaniah, the guild master of carvers, presented the coral crown. Drummers struck a steady beat. Priests chanted an invocation to Osano Bua. May his sight pierce darkness, his voice command respect. The eyes lifted the crown and gently set it upon Yuka's brow. At that moment, a single drum stroke echoed like a pulse through every chest in the hall. Oba, the assembly intoned in measured chorus, the word resonating against walls adorned with bronze plaques of past rulers. The orchestra of brass bells, talking drums, and chanting priests faded into a solemn hush. The newly crowned Oba, Yuka II, rose, arms outstretched, his gaze sweeping across provincial chiefs, foreign envoys, and palace elders alike. He had stepped through trials of seclusion, purification, consecration, and public acclaim, but the hardest test still lay ahead. The unresolved threshold of authorities the Oba descended the days. He paused at the chamber's threshold and looked back upon his regalia crown, scepter, and bells now ranged like silent guardians of his new office. He had been consecrated by water, oil, an ancestral witness, he had received gifts of ivory and coral beads. He had heard the thunder of drums affirming his power. Yet authority is never absolute. He must now negotiate with provincial chiefs hungry for favor, temper the ambitions of palace eunuchs, and navigate the growing influence of Portuguese traders on the coast. Standing at this threshold, you sense the weight of every decision he will make, from salt taxes and foreign alliances to rituals both public and hidden. Will Obeyuka unify a fractious realm? Can he balance tradition with the tide of external change? And what secret counsels within these walls will shape his reign away from prying eyes? With these questions echoing beneath the vaulted rafters, Section 1 draws to a close, leaving you poised on the cusp of power, curiosity lingering as the palace drums fade into distant twilight. The morning after his coronation, Obeyuka awakens to the murmured bustling of palace-light footsteps on clay floors, the low thrum of brass bells signaling offerings to ancestral altars, and distant drum rolls marking the start of another day's ceremonies. Section 1 closed on the threshold of authority, and now you will follow the Oba into private councils, provincial audiences, and the clandestine negotiations that will test his newly claimed power. 1. The first council of state before sunrise. Obeyuka retires to the hall of veiled council, a secluded chamber where only palace eunuchs and select guild masters may enter. The room's walls bear bronze plaques of past obas in private audiences, reminding all that true rulership thrives behind closed doors as much as on public stages. Waiting for him are Reg, head eunuch and keeper of palace protocol, Almond, master of the brass guildiza, chief scribe and archivist of royal decrees. Obeyuka takes his seat upon a low ivory stool. Reg presents a sealed letter from the Eyes, reports of rising salt duties in Bilma that threaten both village subsistence and the palace's revenue. Isa places a parchment ledger before the Oba, listing complaints from commoners and provincial chiefs alike. Onabin offers a bronze prototype of a proposed new plaque for the palace gate, a depiction of Yuka's coronation beside his mother, the Ioba, whose influence he must now codify. Yuka's first act as judge and legislator is to moderate the salt duties. He decrees a temporary reduction from 3 to 2.5 carries per cake. Pending a full review by a council of tribute overseers drawn from royal clans, he instructs Reg to dispatch letters to provincial governors, reaffirming their duties to report accurate tallies of shipments and to welcome shrine custodians appointed by the palace to verify weights. Turning to Onabin's plaque design, Yuka notes that the Ioba's figure is understated. He asks for her visage to occupy an equal panel alongside his own, subtle yet unmistakable, thereby formalizing her advisory role. Isa is ordered to record this change as the first royal decree of the Queen Mother, ensuring that future scribes reference her counsel in council minutes with these decisions. Obeyuka demonstrates a nascent balance, addressing commoner grievances, while strengthening the role of his mother and preserving palace revenues. Yet the scope of his authority and the loyalty of those he commands remains to be tested. Beyond this chamber's veiled hush point to provincial audiences and the politics of tribute be midday. The Oba's court convenes in the palace courtyard. 35 provincial chiefs arrive with offerings, grants of ivory tusks, jars of palm wine, baskets of yams, and finely carved wooden stools. Each gift represents a district's bounty and its allegiance. Among them, Chief Ovia of Udo, master of the ivory-hulled war canoe Shifu of Ikor Hyanwan, renowned for her palm wine vintage Soba Akpan of Ekur, newly asserting claims on inland trade, ravaging the central brazier's glowing coals. Reg sets to bowls, one for cola nuts, one for cowrie shells. As each chief kneels, he offers his bowl and recites a brief oath of fealty. Ovia places 3 tusks beside the brazier, intoning, "May my fleet guard your waters." You pours a small libation of palm wine into the ashes, pledging, "May our lands yield fruit under your reign." Oba Akpan, his voice taut with recent successes, offers only a modest bowl of shills, his political challenge unspoken but palpable. Obayuka acknowledges each offering with measured words. Your tribute honors the throne. Together, we shall guard our realm's safety and prosperity. When Akpan's meager gift is presented, a murmur ripples through the courtyard. Uika pauses, his gaze meeting the chief's eyes. Softly, he responds, "Chief Akpan, your lands yield less ivory, but more courage. Offer what you can, and in time, we will cultivate abundance together." The remark diffuses tension, reaffirming Yuka's commitment to unity over retribution. Chiefs depart in thoughtful silence, each weighing the Oba's blend of firmness and mercy. 3. Sealing alliances in the Queen Mother's garden that afternoon. Uika visits the Queen Mother's private garden, a secluded grove of tamarind trees and flowering shrubs nourished by hidden springs. Here, Idiota hosts a tea ceremony for key palace allies, eunuch overseers, guild masters, and royal scribes. They sit on woven mats beneath low-hanging branches, sipping hibiscus-infused palm wine. Idiota presides, offering each guest a spoonful of the herb-infused brew and a carved kola nut to symbolize shared counsel. She speaks of her son's coronation, praising his judicious salt decree and his respectful audience with provincial chiefs. Then she guides the conversation toward palace infrastructure, repairs to the ancestral altars, renovations to the sacred lagoon's causeway, and the commissioning of a new gong for the Great Hall. Obayuka contributes details on financing, a reappropriation of certain salt revenues, and modest imposts on ivory exports. Onabin sketches designs for the new gong and 8-toned instrument. Tuned to Ito's scales, and Areg commits eunuch artisans to oversee its casting. The gathering's atmosphere is collegial yet purposeful through discreet ceremonies like this. The Queen Mother and Obayuka are cementing a collaborative governance model, blending maternal counsel with royal authority for foreign envoys and the balance of travel late that day. The Portuguese emissaries arrive bearing gifts from Governor Manuel de Castro of Lagos, a barrel of Madeira wine, a chest of Venetian glass beads, and a fine clockwork timepiece. They request permission to establish a licensed warehouse within the city's trade quarter, in exchange for exclusive rights to ivory and pepper imports under the Oba seal. Uika convenes a special audience in the trade pavilion, its walls lined with bronze plaques depicting past trade agreements. The emissaries present their gifts ceremonially. Each item is examined and recorded by Isa, who inscribes the details into the palace's trading ledger. The Oba listens as they outline terms: a 1-year license, renewable upon review, and a modest annual fee of cowries. He counters with demands. The warehouse must be built solely by Benin artisans using local timber. Trade privileges extend also to coastal canoe captains carrying Benin's ivory, and half the wine must be offered at royal feasts. After measured negotiations, the emissaries accept these conditions. A treaty is drafted on parchment sealed with an ivory stamp bearing the Oba's crest. The Oba's signature scored in red cola paste affirms his control over foreign commerce, without alienating European partners. 5. The secret oath that the python shreddiest dust drapes the palace in shadows. The Oba slips away for the final ritual of this section, the secret oath at the python shrine, where Daiuku, the royal python, resides. Guided by the high priest, Uika kneels before a circle of stones beneath a grove of plantains. The high priest presents a coiled python comb, and revered Dan slices his own forearm, allowing a drop of blood to fall into crushed cola dust. He whispers the ancient vow, O progeny of our founders, I bind my soul to your coils. May justice and mercy guide my steps. Utica follows suit, placing his finger beside the priest's scar and releasing a drop of blood into the cola. The serpent's gentle hiss reverberates through the hush, interpreted as acceptance of the oath. When the mixture is poured onto the soil, a faint rustling signals the spirit's acknowledgement. This oath sealed in secret darkness binds Oba, Utica II, in ways no public decree can. It reminds him of ancestral accountability and the spiritual mandate that underpins his earthly authority. 6. Unresolved test of authority with the public ceremonies concluded and private oaths sworn. Oba Utica defaces his first major tests. Salt revenue review. Will provincial chiefs honor the interim duties, or will they press for further reductions? Trade balance. Can the Portuguese warehouse remain under Benin terms, or will foreign pressure erode the Oba's commercial leverage? Coastal security. Will coastal councils and patrols deter slave raiders, or will new threats emerge from rival? Polities and European interlopers? Spiritual mandate. Does the python truly bind the Oba's spirit, or can political exigencies force him to break sacred promises? As candles gutter in the python shrine's hush and drumming fades beyond the palace walls, you sense that Oba Utica I's reign now hinges on these unresolved challenges. His coronation bestowed divine authority, but wielding it justly, balancing tradition and innovation, will determine his legacy. Just before dawn, a quiet stirs across the red earth precincts of Benin City. Courtiers and palace officials, accustomed to the Oba's early morning presence, find their paths crossing as they hurry with latest reports the salt overseers bring. Initial tallies indicating that Bilma's tribute chiefs have delivered 2.5 cowries per salt cake as decreed, yet several district governors have hoarded shipments for delayed delivery. The Portuguese warehouse in the trade quarter hums softly with activity, its iron-bound doors awaiting inspection. Coastal patrol logs note one attempted illage incursion rebuffed by Benin-led flotillas, and somewhere beneath the palace's vaulted ceilings, the python's hiss from last night's oath seems to echo, reminding Oba Utica of ancestral expectations. Today, you will witness the culmination of Uica's early reign, how he converts decrees into action, negotiates realpolitik with foreign powers, resolves local resistance, and fuses spiritual mandate with pragmatic governance. The tasks ahead will test his wisdom, courage, and commitment to justice, and reveal how a newly crowned divine ruler wrestles with the imperfections of human power. 1. Enforcing the salt decree mid-morning, Oba Utica convenes the salt council in the hall of seated scribes. Eunuch overseers unfurl camel-hide parchments bearing district-by-district salt delivery records. Chiefs of Bilma, Orhianwin, and Ekpoma sit before low benches, each with a clay bowl of offerings, cola nuts signifying good faith, tiny cowrie pouches symbolizing tribute, and sprigs of cola leaves for clarity of speech. Eyes at the chief scribe reads aloud the shortages. Bilma, 80% compliance, with 20% of loads delayed by local drought. Udo, 65% compliance, citing damaged roads and lost oxen. Ekpoma, 40% compliance, alleging port customs applied additional blessing fees. Oba Utica listens without haste. He first addresses Udo's challenge. He dispatches the Oba's invoice, instructing them to deliver foodstuffs, dried yams, and smoked fish to famine-stricken villages, ensuring future compliance. Then he turns to Ekpoma. He orders an audit of blessing fees, decreeing that any fee not explicitly sanctioned by royal decree be refunded within 7 days, with chaplain oversight to prevent future exactions. Finally, Bilma's issues demand no immediate sanction. But Utica commands the construction of a small reservoir to collect seasonal rains, a long-term solution to drought-induced delays. His final pronouncement is neither punitive nor lenient. Let these measures bind us in shared prosperity. Those who falter by force majeure shall receive aid. Those who profit from confusion shall answer to the ancestral bench. The council adjourns, and eunuchs deliver shorthand copies of the decree to provincial palaces. Palace scribes docket royal solutions for salt delay under the day's date, and the chiefs retire, some with relief, others with chagrin. 2. Inspecting the Portuguese warehouse, midday sunlight streaks through the trade quarters' narrow alleys. As Utica, flanked by Reg and Isa, proceeds to the Portuguese warehouse, its twin doors swing open before them. Inside, crates of ivory, pepper, and cola nuts lie stacked next to barreled linens and glass beads. A clockwork timepiece ticks softly on a wooden table, marking hours with a gentle chime unfamiliar to Edo ears. The warehouse's manager, João Fernandes, a cousin of Captain Mateus, greets them in halting Edo, his hand extended in deference. Utica inspects each section, ivory section. He checks that tusks are tagged with Oba's seal, ensuring no ivory has been smuggled or misdeclared. Pepper cask. He tastes a single burnished bead, nodding at its pungency. Bead crates. He tests the shine and color, noting that some glass beads show subtle fissures likely from oceanic humidity. Satisfied, he raises a single finger, and João presents the annual license fee, a pile of calories equal to 2 months' salt revenue. Utica signals a eunuch to count and record every calorie inscribed in the palace's revenue ledgers. As the tally concludes, he steps forward and announces, "Your goods shall sell under royal protection. Let no harm befall them in transit." He accepts a final gift, a small bottle of French wine gifted by the master of the Saljuo, and reciprocates with a carved coral pendant, the Oba's crest spiraling in relief. The exchange completed, he departs, leaving the warehouse secure under Bennett's Aegis. 3. Coastal Patrol and the Illage according late afternoon. Utica boards a sleek ivory hull or canoe at the palace's river dock, bound for the lagoons, edge where coastal patrols assemble. The flotilla, 6 canoes bearing musketeers armed with matchlocks, and squads of archers cuts through the water in disciplined formation. Obisu stands at the lead, his status now dual as envoy and patrol commander, his ivory peza catching the sun's last glare. They make landfall at a sandbar where Illage canoes once launched their raids. The Illage chief, escorted by his own militia, approaches under a white flag truce. Utica meets him beneath a shade pavilion. He opens talks. "Your raids threaten our covenant. Let us restore trust rather than brandish muskets." The Illage chief, his face stern and guarded, asks for proof of mutual benefit. Utica gestures to Obisu and presents a ledger showing shared revenues from joint fishing rights, rations provided by Ujo to coastal fishermen, and rotating patrol duties that have reduced piracy by 80%. He then offers a new treaty. Illage traders gain reduced landing fees for a decade in exchange for pledges to report any threats. Within 20 miles of Ujo, a ceremonial exchange follows, gifts of iron cooking pots for Illage elders and ropes of cowries for Obisu's militia. With the treaty sealed, coastal canoes slip past without fear. The flotilla returns to Benin City at dusk, the lagoon's water stirred only by paddles and renewed trust. 4. The Queen Mother's Festival of Council that evening. Queen Mother Idiota hosts the Festival of Council in her private garden. Lantern light flickers across braided palm fronds as she gathers palace artisans, scribes, and regional emissaries. Drummers perform a gentle rhythm, and courtiers sip hibiscus wine infused with cola and honey. Idiot asks Obeyuka to recount the days, triumphs, and challenges. He speaks of salt reforms, the warehouse inspection, and the Illidicord each frame as victories of justice tempered with mercy. She rises, raising a brass bell. Tonight, we celebrate leadership that honors ancestors and uplifts people. May your reign be as balanced as these chimes. Attendees ring the bell in unison, a private echo of public authority before lighting palm oil, candles, and placing them in the garden's reflecting pool. The flickering lights across water symbolize the Oba's duty to reflect his people's welfare. 5. The hidden python shrine vigil long after the festival ends. Obeyuka slips away for one final vigil at the python shrine. Cloaked in darkness, beneath the planned grove, he visits the coiled Adayuku. The high priest awaits with a silent coil of cola paste and a blade. Uika presses another drop of blood into the mixture, whispering a vow to uphold laws enacted today not merely for convenience, but because ancestors demand honor beyond mortal gain. As the mixture seeps into the soil, a soft rustle echoes among fronds, interpreted as ancestral approval. The hiss seems to say, walk with integrity, and you will endure. This hidden rite, known only to a few, recharges the Oba's spiritual mandates, reminding him that public power requires private humility. 6. Reflection. The Oba's balancing act this night settles over Benin City. You pause at the palace's threshold, recalling the arcs of these three sections. Ritual foundation. The coronation sacred ceremonies, water, oil, cola, and the python's oath imbued Uika with ancestral authority. Administrative debut. The first council decrees, provincial audiences, and coastal diplomacy tested his capacity to translate ritual into policy, consolidation of power, enforcing salt duties with compassion, formalizing foreign trade, quelling coastal raids, and weaving maternal council exemplify his emerging leadership. In this crucible of tradition and statecraft, Uika balanced competing demands, ancestral mandates, public welfare, and political pragmatism. His decisions like the salt decree, warehouse license, and Illidicord show that rulership is seldom absolute. Rather, it arises from calibrated compromises and a constant interplay of spiritual, domestic, and foreign pressures. 7. Modern resonance. Leadership lessons from Benedict Insider. Today's leaders, whether managing global trade agreements, reforming taxation, or negotiating security pacts. The Oba's approach offers enduring insights, ritual legitimacy. Formal ceremonies bolster authority, but must be backed by consistent action. Inclusive policy, balancing elite privileges with commoner needs, secures broader support. Diplomatic, equity, legitimate authority rests on fair reciprocity, even with powerful external partners. Spiritual accountability, private ethics, and public governance must align to sustain trust. As you step away from the palace walls, the drums fade, but their lesson remains. Power prospers where ritual, policy, and integrity meet. Obeyuka eyes a Santan, his early reign illuminate how leaders can transform divine right into just rule, how authority can be at once sacred and pragmatic, and how every decree echoes in the lives of salt farmers, traders, and coastal guardians alike. 1. The making of a palace eunuch. Becoming a palace eunuch in 16th century Benin required more than surgical alteration. It demanded years of strict training and constant oversight. Boys, often from conquered provinces, are offered as tribute arrived. Before age 12, selected for their youth, pliability, and absence of strong family ties. They were brought to the House of Purity, a secluded compound within the palace walls where they underwent ritual castration, performed by specialized palace smiths. Under the goddess Oligan's evocation, The operation itself took place at an altar ringed by for brass bells. Priests chanted incantations, spirits of the deep, cleave not the king's heart, grant these youths new purpose apart. Using obsidian blades sterilized in boiling palm oil, the smiths removed the boys' testicles, sealed the wound with melted beeswax and camwood paste, and bound it with sacred textile. The boy's world then shrank to a dim chamber, no direct sunlight, no contact with women, where he fasted on yams and bitter leaf soup for 7 days. At its end, priests tested his wounds' healing by anointing it with coal-infused water. A clean recovery signified divine favor and granted entry into the palace's inner service. Over subsequent years, the neophyte eunuch learned palace protocol, the oba's genealogies, the proper handling of aura-increasing coral beads, the subtle handshakes that signified rank, and the encrypted codes used to summon officials. They practiced silent speaking, only when addressed and mastered the art of reading bronze plaque allegories, each one depicting ancestral precedents for palace governance. By age 20, a eunuch might escort the oba to a shrine or oversee palace stores, positions of trust afforded only to those impossible to threaten the royal line. 2. Gatekeepers of excess in the early mornings murmur. You slip into the hall of whispered names, where ivory tablets listing the day's audience petitions hang on bronze pegs. Here, eunuchs preside as gatekeepers, a petitioner provincial chief, foreign envoy, or palace guild master must present a stamped petition to a senior eunuch, who compares it to the oba's sealed instructions. You watch Chief Oviev Udo kneel before a eunuch in white wrappers, presenting a petition for military aid against Riverine raiders. The eunuch inclines his head, glances at the tablet inscribed with oba's crown directives, military requests, and makes a delicate stroke with a reed pen on the petition's margin. Approved first R. Ovia rises, relief etched on his braided face. Moments later, a Portuguese envoy carrying a letter sealed with his captain's emblem approaches. His petition requests meetings and trade privileges. A different eunuch, noting the envoy's lack of obus paisa, summons the Isis chamberlain by discreet bell tap, a signal watched closely by scribes. The envoy's petition remains pending, contingent on verifying his oba-sanctioned credentials. Silver coins do not sway these eunuchs. Only proper protocol grants entry. Thus eunuchs control the flow of influence into the oba's presence. Whether a tribute dispute or a marriage alliance, every supplicant bows first to these silent sentinels. Their capacity to grant or deny audiences turns them into unseen power brokers, whose favor is coveted by all. 3. Masters of the oba's private treasury. In audience halls lies the oba's private treasury, a warren of iron-bound chests, bronze, reliquaries, and coral bead pouches secured behind 3 successive gates. Only eunuchs and a handful of high priests may traverse this labyrinth. There, they oversee tribute collections, cowries, brass manillas, ivory tusks, and small parcels of Portuguese lace and Venetian glass each day. Eunuchs conduct a ritual inventory. They chant as they open chests by ivory's weight and beads. Right gleam, we account for tribute stream, using bronze scales calibrated in the salt ward and sandalwood ink to note figures on parchment. Scrolls bound with raffia, they verify that each tribute matches palace ledgers. Discrepancies, whether missing tusk or additional manillas, trigger quiet investigations. A eunuch sleuths through petitions, questions the responsible clerk, and consults logs of caravanserai arrivals. Through these duties, eunuchs not only safeguard the oba's wealth, but also influence regional taxation. Chiefs who underpay may find their petitions delayed or their goods inspected more frequently. 4. Diplomatic intermediaries. In the sheen of palace banquets, Eunuchs also serve as diplomatic intermediaries. You attend an evening feast in the brass-bladed dining hall, where Portuguese captains mingle with Edo chiefs. The center of courtly attention is a low dais where the oba reclines, on a leopard skin cushion. At his side stands Ego, the chief eunuch, presenting carved coral goblets of palm wine. Ego translates between Portuguese and Edo with measured courtesy, ensuring that each compliment and request maintains its proper nuance. When a Portuguese captain offers a gift of fine cloth, Ego bows, conveys the oba's gratitude, and inquires softly but firmly about customs duties. He then guides the captains to present their wares in the trade pavilion under palace auspices, deftly redirecting foreign ambitions into controlled channels. Through such mediation, eunuchs shape Benin's foreign policy, reinforcing the oba's authority, negotiating favorable trade terms, and preventing friction between coastal traders and inland rulers. Their fluency across cultures learned through early training in languages and rituals makes them indispensable envoys within the palace's inner network. 5. Intrigues and factional rivalries. Yet the eunuch's power also breeds rivalry. Late at night, you slip into a quieter corridor where the senior eunuchs Reg and Honorhan meet in hushed tones. Both seek influence over the young oba, each sponsoring different palace factions. Reg aligns with the oba's supporters, while Honorhan leans toward traditionalist chiefs fearing female influence. Their dispute centers on the next festival script. Should the ceremony emphasize ancestral matrilineal ties or the oba's paternal divine descent? Over mugs of hibiscus wine, they exchange polished arguments. Reg cites the oba's decisive role in the coronation. Honorhan references centuries of patrilineal bronze plaques. Each wields their unique network's messengers, scribes, and minor officials to draft alternate festival scripts and propose sermon texts to palace priests. Their rivalry remains hidden from outsiders, but its effects ripple outward. Festival plans stall. Artisans await final instructions, and foreign envoys sense an undertone of uncertainty in the palace's public messaging. In Benin's inner court, eunuchs' alliances can make or unmake major ceremonial and policy decisions. 6. The restoration of bronze plaques in mid-morning's light. You enter the palace workshop where bronze guild masters restore ancestral plaques under eunuch supervision. A recent rainstorm damaged several panels. Palace eunuch inspectors accompany Onabin, the guild master, to identify which plaques require recasting. They debate which ancestral scenes to highlight, whether to add a subtle depiction of Eoba, Idia, to alongside the Oba's bas-reliefs. When Onabin suggests elevating maternal imagery, Reg quietly supports the move, citing the Oba's own wish. Honorhan objects, calling for adherence to the 15th century template. The compromise agreed by eunuchs and guild masters is to carve small vine motifs around specific ancestral faces, a discreet nod to female influence without altering the central narratives. This solution underscores eunuchs' role as custodians of Benin's living history. They balance innovation with tradition, ensuring palace iconography evolves while preserving ancestral continuity. 7. The unresolved power of silence. As dusk falls and you emerge into the palace's outer courtyard, torches flicker against the red walls. You ponder the eunuch's dual existence, visible as guards, translators, and overseers, yet fundamentally hidden in the palace's innermost sanctums. Their influence spans access, finance, diplomacy, and ideological direction. They negotiate foreign treaties by day, arbitrate internal disputes by night, and commune with ancestral spirits in secret shrines. Yet questions linger. How much power will these eunuch factions wield over Obayuika-I's reign? Will the rivalry between Reg and Honorhan spark broader palace schisms? Can eunuchs as outsiders by birth, truly safeguard the realm's unity, or will their own ambitions undermine the Oba's authority? And as foreign influences swell, might palace eunuchs serve as bulwarks of tradition or become conduits for external manipulation? You walk away beneath overhanging palm fronds. The distant drumbeats a reminder that in Bennett's palace politics, the most potent power often resides not with the crowned figure, but with those who stand silent, steady, indispensable at his side. You step beyond Benin City's northern palace gate just as dawn's haze dissolves into warm sunlight. The air carries a heady mingling of damp earth, exotic woods, and the faint metallic tang of bronze. Here, among the winding alleys of guild compounds, lie the workshops of the brass casters artisans whose labor shaped not only ornate plaques and regalia, but the very heart of Edo's spiritual life. Central to their craft are the intertwined creations, the resonant bells that ring during ceremonies, and the ancestral altars on which they hang. Today, you will enter their world, the hidden rituals of metalworking, the secret language of bell, tones, and the hallowed altars that bridge the living and the dead. 1. The Guild of the Eigenarenwan, guardians of bronze lore. Before you reach the first workshop, you pass under a simple wooden arch carved with twin serpent motifs, the emblem of the Eigenarenwan, the brass casting guild charged with preserving sacred techniques. A black-robed guild master stands sentinel, inspecting each newcomer with sober eyes. Only those bearing the guild's brass-tipped badge may step inside. You flash your own badge granted by Master Amar centuries. Go and pass beneath the arch into a courtyard strewn with charcoal dust and discarded crucible fragments. Here, under a thatched shelter, apprentices tend fires in 3 earthen furnaces. Furnace of purification, used for the first smelting of newly mined copper and tin, baptized with colonnade offerings. Furnace of shaping, where ingots are heated and hammered into bells, plaques, and ornamentation. Furnace of tempering, reserved for final treatments that deepen bronze's hue and tone. Master caster Gaio, his shaved head wrapped in red cloth, gestures you forward. He dips a leafy branch into a bowl of palm wine mixed with crushed camwood, sprinkles droplets into the furnace of purification, and chants Biolican's depths and a Sonobua's forge. Let bronze bear witness to our lineage's voice. The apprentices lay cola nuts, ivory tusks, and fragments of ancestral plaques atop the furnace's rimmed sacrifices meant to infuse the metal with both spiritual potency and ancestral memory. To casting the bells, ritual and resonance follow Gaio to a low stone bench where the apprentices pour molten bronze into bell-shaped molds, carved from fine-grained sand. The molds bear intricate relief, crawling vines, stylized human faces, and swirling motifs symbolizing wind and water. As the metal cools, the apprentice taps each bell's exterior, listening for a pure, resonant tone. A crackling note signals success. A dull thud demands the bell be recast. The process unfolds step by step. Design engraving. A master draws bell patterns on parchment, each motif laden with meaning. Concentric circles for cyclical time. Interlaced grids for ancestral connection. Serpent tails for earthly journey. Mold creation. Apprentices sculpt molds from river-silt sand, compressed layer by layer round wooden forms, then dried in the sun. Alloy mixing. Copper and tin are weighed precisely 8 parts copper to 1 part tin, then melted under peeled palm leaves and colonnade skins, imparting organic sulfurs that enrich the bronze's sheen. Casting. Molten alloy is ladled into the molds, then allowed to cool for exactly 6 hours, no more, no less, to prevent warping, unmolding, and tuning. The bell shells are freed, sand brushed away, and rims ground with iron files. Apprentices hang bells from wooden frames and strike them gently with bone mallets, listening for the designated four-tone scale. Used in palace rituals, each bell's voice must align with the palace's sonic covenant, a tonal sequence invoking ancestor spirits. A set of 7 bells ranging from deep bass to high treble. While ringing the Oba's festival of coronation, a 3-bell chorus signals morning rites. The slightest flaw in resonance is unacceptable. These bells communicate with realms unseen. 3. Ancestral altars, the sacred staging grounds. Next, you are led into the altar hall, where freshly cast bells await installation. Here, Master Carpenter Igbenosa has built 2-tiered altars from seasoned Iroko wood, their platforms carved with patterns echoing the brass reliefs. The lower tier holds offerings colonnaded slabs, palm oil bowls, water from the sacred lagoon well. The upper tier suspends the bells from braided palm fiber cords. Gaio instructs apprentices in a precise ritual, consecration of wood. The altars are wiped with sesame oil and sprinkled with crushed cola dust, then draped in coral bead garlands. Bell installation. Each bell is lifted by 2 apprentices, its cord looped over brass hooks hammered into the altar beams. Hooks are placed according to a cosmic grid, north for paternal ancestors, south for maternal ancestors, east for warrior lineage, and west for wisdom-bearing elders. Ritual lighting. Torchbearers circle the altar thrice, lighting small palm oil lamps hung at its base. The flickering light likens the ancestors' guiding spirits, offerings and incantations. Gaio, standing before the assembled bells, offers palm wine libations into small basins before reciting sacred names. Osanobua, Olokin, Ogun each, name followed by a single toll from the deepest bell, invoking their witness. When the ceremony concludes, the bells ring themselves. Gnarled palms strike chords, producing a low, haunting melody. You feel the vibration in your chest, a bridge between mortal and ancestral realms, where history's whispers resonate anew. 4. Guardians of memory and power. Brass bells and ancestral altars serve multiple roles in Penance. Palace life, ceremonial markers. Tolling bells signal the Oba's daily audiences, the opening of council sessions, and the timing of sacrifices. Spiritual anchors. Altars host offerings ensuring ancestral approval of royal decrees, from salt duty adjustments to foreign trade. Licenses. Political instruments. Eunuch overseers use bell calls to convene factions or interrupt dissent, reinforcing palace hierarchy through sound. Cultural repository. Bell motifs encode lineage tales. Altars preserve oral histories of past obas and heroic deeds, visible in each carved vine and face. For you, each rhythmic ringing, whether a gentle chime for dawn offerings or a sonorous toll at coronation, holds with layers of meaning, ancestral memory, political authority, and spiritual contract. 5. The unresolved echoes of bronzy as you step back into the courtyard, leaving the altar hall's dusk-lit hush. The final toll of a distant bell follows you. You consider these brass artifacts so patiently cast, ritually installed, and meticulously tuned anchor the Oba's power in the tangible realm of sound and sight. They make the unseen felt and the past audible. Yet questions linger in the cooling air. How do these silent guardians fare when palace factions clash? Will future Obas honor the ancient covenant of bell and altar, or will evolving rituals retune the bell's messages as foreign influences press in iron tools from Portuguese workshops? Christian missionaries near the coast, how will the brass traditions adapt or resist change? In Benedict Palace, each bell remains poised above its altar, waiting for the next toll to summon history itself, and you, standing on the threshold of sound and silence, Feel the enduring power of bronze poised to speak on behalf of ancestors yet to be heard. The sun has climbed above the palace walls, and the early morning incense haze has burned away, leaving the courtyard bathed in gold. You return to the Eigen Ehrenmann Guild compound, where Master Gaio and his apprentices prepare for the next phase, maintaining the palace's existing bells and altars and crafting new pieces for the obas. Upcoming festivals. Today, you'll discover how these artisans sustain bronze traditions through ritual upkeep, respond to political crises with new commissions, and navigate tensions between preserving ancestral forms and embracing innovation. 1. Daily bell maintenance and the eunuch inspectors each dawn. After the Oba's first audience, eunuch inspectors make their rounds to the altar hall, accompanied by 2 apprentices from the guild. The inspectors examine every bell and altar, bell polishing, using cloths of goat hair and beeswax polish. They remove soot and fingerprints, ensuring the bronze sheen aligns with its spiritual luster. Tone tuning. With ivory mallets, they gently tap each bell, listening for any dull or off-key notes. A bell that fails must be marked for recasting or carefully ground at its rim to restore the correct pitch, cord replacement. Over time, palm fiber cords fray. Inspectors untie worn loops and rebraid fresh cords, often using cassia bark to strengthen fibers so bells hang securely and ring freely. Altar repair. Wooden beams are checked for termite damage. Small cracks are filled with camwood paste, then sealed with sesame oil. Coral bead garlands are relaced where strands have broken. Eunuch. Inspectors, their white wrappers undisturbed by palace dust, move methodically. Their presence underscores that bronze care is inseparable from palace order. A neglected bell could symbolize ancestral displeasure, while a perfect tone reinforces the Oba's rightful authority. 2. Commissioning crisis bells during the drop midi brings urgent word. A severe drought in the western provinces has halted salt caravans to Benin City. The Oba, seeking both divine intervention and public reassurance, decrees a toll of compassion, a new set of 5 bells, each inscribed with a plea for rain and symbols of renewal, sprouting grains, flowing rivers, ancestral hands raised. In blessing, Master Gaio convenes the guild council under the thatched shelter, designed to bait. Almond proposes traditional motif throws of sheaves and water scrolls, while a younger caster, a maid, suggests adding a new emblem, a coiled python to invoke Idaiku's life-giving waters. Ritual timing. Bereg urges that casting must occur on the 4th day of the new moon, when ancestral spirits are said to be most receptive. Honor encounters that rain spirits favor the first quarter moon. Resource allocation. A mix of recycled bronze from damaged plaques and new copper tin alloy is approved, ensuring enough material without disrupting regular bell production. After hours of debate, compromise is reached. Classic grain and water motifs encircle each bell's waist, with a small python vine woven beneath the rim. Casting is scheduled for 2 days hence, with rituals of calling it offerings to Olakin's shrine before first melting. 3. The casting ceremony and political messaging in the appointed day. The furnaces of purification blaze, priests and eunuchs gather, torchlight flickering on guild members' focused faces. A hush falls as Gaio pours molten bronze into the python-adorned molds. Apprentices drum the furnace of shaping in a measured rhythm. Dum, dock, dum, dock. By bronze's heat and Cola's breath, call forth the clouds, undo the drought's death. When cooled, the new bells are unveiled 5 and graduated. Sizes, their bronze surfaces gleaming faintly green from the camwood patina. Gaio strikes the largest bell. The deep, sonorous tone rolls through the courtyard. The smaller bells echo in descending resonance and audible prayer. that carries across palace corridors and into the waiting city. These bells, once installed, will toll thrice each morning, and each toll a reminder of the Oba's compassion and the people's shared hope for rain. Their very creation becomes political messaging, the Oba's administration responsive, his rituals dynamic, and his artisans through bronze's voice speaking directly to both heavens and subjects die for. Innovation versus tradition introducing. Bronze hour plates while maintaining ancestral forms. The guild also experiments with new objects, hour plates, flat, circular bells marked with 12 radial notches, each notch corresponding to an Oba's appointed hour of prayer and palace curfew. These plates, suspended in the palace corridors, will ring lightly whenever Gilder's petals drop onto tiny bronze tines, creating a gentle chime guiding foot traffic after dusk. This innovation sparks debate. Traditionalists worry the hour plates resemble foreign clock mechanisms, corrupting Edo-temporal rituals. Modernists argue that regulated time aids palace efficiency and security, preventing nocturnal disruptions. Oba Uwaka weighs in. He orders a test installation in the Queen Mother's garden. Over several nights, the hour plate's soft tones succeed in gathering palace officials for pre-dawn council, while avoiding the jarring clangs feared by traditionalists. With the Oba's approval, hour plates are incorporated on a trial basis illustrating how guilds navigate evolving palace needs without forsaking ancestral bronze legacies. 5. The altar renewal for the ancestral feast is the annual ancestral feast. Approaches a festival honoring past Oba's guild masters prepare a major intervention. The complete renewal of the grand ancestral altar, located in the great courtyard. This altar supports 7 massive bells dating back centuries, many of which exhibit wear, dents, and tonal drift over weeks. Apprentices and eunuchs work together. Altar disassembly, the 7 bells are gently lowered, paired eunuchs supporting. Each dot bell restoration, cracks are repaired through laser-like bronze welding, an advanced tradition introduced from Portuguese smiths, and rims are reground for pitch accuracy. Altar refurbishment, the wooden beams scarred by weather are replaced with hardwood Iroko, smooth, treated with palm oil, and reissued with ancestral inscriptions by guild scribes. Reinstallation ritual on Feast Eve. The bells are rehung in position, each accompanied by a ceremonial pouring of cola wine and ancestral hymn recitations. The next morning, as dignitaries gather for the feast, the restored bells ring in a full, harmonious chord that resonates across the courtyard, reaffirming both ancestral continuity and the guild's enduring stewardship. 6. Unresolved futures of bronze and power as dust settles after the ancestral feast. You stand once more before the grand ancestral altar. The newly tuned bells hang like watchful sentinels, their tones rich, balanced, and evocatively familiar bridge past and present. Yet questions remain. Innovation's limits. Will future Obas continue to experiment introducing new bronze forms like our plates? Or will tradition reclaim primacy? Political stakes. How will eunuch inspectors and palace factions leverage bell commissions to assert influence? Cultural resilience as foreign guilds and missionaries press new craft techniques. And religious shifts. Can Eigen Aaron preserve Edo bronze lore unchanged? In Benedict Palace, the resonance of bronze is never merely decorative. It is the echo of authority, memory, and divine contract. You depart under the bell's lingering hum, aware that each toll counts not seconds, but centuries of power, poetry, and the enduring call of ancestors yet to speak. You slip through an unassuming gate in the eastern palace wall and find yourself in the royal gardens of verdant oasis amid red earth ramparts. The air here is cooler, perfumed by clove blooms, neem leaves, and the sharp tang of freshly crushed ginger. In Benin City's palace, these gardens are not mere decoration, but vital repositories of healing knowledge. Over centuries, the Oba's herbalists have cultivated this living pharmacy from pounded bark that staunches, bleeding to fragrant petals that ease fevers. Today, you will wander winding paths, meet the herb masters, and learn how daily palace life depended on the subtle power of plants. 1. The layout of the royal gardens stretching across half a hectare. The palace gardens are divided into 3 sections. The East Grove, dominated by tall iroko and neem trees whose canopies filter sunlight to the understory. Here, shade-loving herbs like cola and bitter leaf grow in carefully spaced rows. The central beds, a network of raised soil mounds edged with polished wood. Each bed houses a different medicinal family, Zingabracia for ginger and galangal, Balayaceae for neem and mahogany bark, and Myrtaceae for guava and clove. The southern court, an open terrace bordered by pomegranate hedges and fountain pools. Floating on the water are deadly nightshade leaves for ritual purification, and lotus blossoms imported from distant river shrines. Narrow red brick paths link these sections, each path named after a deity of healing Osano Bua's way. Oligans, path, and Ogans walk reminding herbalists of the spirits who oversee their craft. 2. The chief herb master's morning ritual at dawn. You meet the chief herb master in the East Grove, clad in a white wrapper threaded with bark fiber cords. He begins with a libation. A small gourd of palm wine is poured around the base of a towering neem tree. He murmurs, "By your shade and bitter bite, teach us balance, ward off blight." He then plucks a single neem leaf, crushes it between thumb and forefinger, and inhales its sharp aroma. This confirms the tree's health. You attest each plant similarly, squeezing ginger rhizomes for firm flesh, brushing cola pods to check for insect bore holes, and stroking bitter leaf leaves for a silvery sheen that indicates maturity. The mornings harvest a basket of fresh leaves, roots, and bark strips will be processed into remedies and poultices by noon. 3. Processing and potion crafting. You follow your back to the gardens herbarium pavilion, a stilted structure of woven raffia walls and a stone-lined hearth. Apprentice herbalists sit at low benches, pounding dried bark into fine powder, slicing roots into thin chips, and steeping petals in clay jars of water. You oversees 3 key preparations: fever elixir, boiled guava leaves and ginger chips in palm wine until reduced by half a tonic to break fevers and boost appetite. Wound salve, mix neem leaf paste with honey and crushed cola nuts. An antiseptic salve applied to cuts and battle wounds. Dream tonic, steep lotus blossoms with cloves. In warm water, strain into a gourd. Add flavor with a hint of bitter leaf, a soothing draught believed to ward off nightmares. Each recipe is recited in Edo verse, passed down through generations, simmered root and bitter leaf in wine's embered reef. Bring clear head and quiet sleep. Measured titrations to handfuls of leaves to 1 gourd of liquid ensure both efficacy and safety. 4. The palace chamber's daily needs be mid-morning. Palace servants arrive with bowls of fresh fruit, jars of palm oil, and baskets of crusted yams. They carry these to the adjoining royal infirmary, a cluster of small rooms staffed by eunuch physicians. Under yours guidance, the physicians distribute the prepared potions: fever elixir for a chamberlain's chills, wound salve for a guard scratch, dream tonic for the Oba's restless page. The gardens yield powers daily court life, robust health sustains palace functions, and the herb master's quiet labor ensures that outbreaks of malaria or simple infections once deadly become manageable maladies. 5. The unresolved seeds of medicinal changes. You wander back through the central beds, noting newly planted seedlings of imported rheumatism herbs and experimental grafts of foreign aloe. You sense the palace gardening craft is anything but static. You are hints at forthcoming experiments with Portuguese quinine bark, rumored to cure fevers more swiftly than any local remedy. Yet questions hang in the humid air. How will these foreign plants alter established cures? Will traditional herbalists adapt or resist such novelties? And as trade winds bring ever more exotic species, can the knowledge of ancestral spirits keep pace with botanical change? You pause by a young cola sapling the promise of renewed vitality and realize that in the palace gardens, every root and leaf carries a story yet to bloom. The sun has climbed high above the palace walls, turning the red bricks to deep rust and sending flickers of light dancing across the damp soil of the royal gardens. After Section 1's introduction to the living pharmacy and its morning harvest, you now return to witness how the garden's bounty is tested by crisis, expanded through experimentation, and woven into the Oba's wider agenda. Today, you will accompany Ewer and his apprentices as they respond to a mysterious illness among palace guards, trial new foreign plants, and prepare for the grand ancestral health festival that will showcase the garden's curative powers too. The entire core .1, a mysterious ailment, and the guardhouse consultation would arise before dawn. Several palace guards stationed at the southern ramparts have fallen ill with persistent fevers and aching joints. The Oba orders Ewer to visit the guardhouse and diagnose the malady. You follow Ewer along the curved brick paths of Ogan's Walk, passing dew-slicked basil beds and clusters of feverfew. At the guardhouse, a stout structure of mud brick, and thatch, you find half a dozen guards swathed in blankets, their faces pale beneath helmets. Ewer kneels by the first guard, placing a fresh neem leaf against his forehead. The ironclad man winces, then nods as the leaf's cool bitterness eases the throbbing. Ewer's diagnosis blends observation and ritual. Symptom survey. He notes high temperatures, swollen joints, and listless movement signs of suspected malaria or a waterborne pathogen. Environmental scan. He inquires about the guard's drinking water, learning that a nearby well has turned brackish since yesterday's rains. Spirit. Consultation. He crushes bitter leaf and collards juice into a poultice, applies it to the guard's temples, and recites an incantation beseeching Osanobua's healing breath, O breath of the earth, cool the fire within, let strength return. Where fever has been, within minutes, the guard's pulse steadies. Ewer orders the immediate closure of the suspect well, dispatches unit couriers to fetch water from the sacred lagoon spring, and prescribes a regimen, fever elixir twice daily, wound saw rub on swollen knees, and daily doses of fresh neem tea. The Oba's physicians, following Ewer's instructions, prepare clay jars of tonic and distribute them with urgent ceremony, an embodiment of the palace's reliance on garden remedies too. Trialing the quinine experiment with the immediate crisis addressed, Ewer returns to the central beds to supervise an experiment promised by foreign traders, samples of cinchon, a bark known to Portuguese sailors as fever tree remedy. The introduction of a non-native species has sparked debate among herbalists and traditionalists alike. Will cinchona undermine local remedies or serve as a valuable addition? Under a woven canopy, Ewer convenes his senior apprentices. Cultivation. Test plot. A raised bed of sandy loam has been prepared, its soil enriched with composted neem leaves and goat dung to mimic Indian conditions. Preparation method comparison. They will brew cinchona bark in 3 ways cold infusion. Hot decoction with palm wine and mix with local wormwood leaves to compare efficacy and taste. Dosage and safety protocols. Dosages will begin at small pinches, increasing gradually. Any signs of toxicity, nausea, ringing ears will halt the trial immediately. You observe the first decoction, bark chips simmering in iron cauldrons of palm wine, the air filling with sharp, medicinal spice. Your taste to drop his grimace. Fleeting as he notes the cinchana's bitter quinine sting, he jots careful notes, then stirs in crushed lemon balm to soften the flavor. Over the next fortnight, the apprentices monitor guard recoveries and record subjective effects, creating the palace's first hybrid pharmacopoeia blending Edo and Indian knowledge. 3. Preparations for the Ancestral Health Festival while the trials proceed. The Oba commissions an Ancestral Health Festival to take place at the next full moon of Celebratio, and of the garden's healing heritage. The festival will feature pavilion displays of major remedies, demonstrations of potion making, and anointing ceremonies for visiting dignitaries afflicted by ailments. You organizes the preparations, remedy showcase beds. He directs apprentices. The planned illustrative rows of key species Mars camwood, cola, ginger, neem and decorative patterns spelling the Oba's name in living letters. Demonstration stations. In the southern court, he establishes stations for live potion brewing, fever elixir, wound salve, dream tonic, and incoming trials of cinchana and imported aloe. Each station is flanked by information tablets explaining uses, dosage, and spiritual context. Anointing ritual plans. He drafts the festival script. The Oba will lead a procession to each station, sampling a dip of remedy and offering a carved spoonful to palace elders. Eunuchs will record his choices for future palace pharmacopoeia. You are liaisons with David, a Portuguese trader who offers samples of imported aloe vera. They agree to set aside a test plot in the garden's northern edge, comparing its gel to local sap extracts for soothing burns. A further extension of palace medicine's evolving scope. 4. The hidden politics of plant patronage amid these preparations. Subtle court politics emerge. Guild Master Onabin of the Brass Caster seeks to sponsor the festival's decorative bronze incense burners, hoping to highlight his guild's role in spiritual ceremonies. Eunuch Inspector reg counters, favoring simpler clay lamps to emphasize humble healing roots. Their dispute surfaces over lantern placement and materials for festival lighting. Ewer steps into broker compromise. He suggests a hybrid design clay, burners in the garden's clinics and bronze burners at the ceremonial pavilion. This solution honors both tradition and prestige, ensuring that the festival's visual focus remains on the plants themselves, rather than overshadowing guild rivalries. 5. The unfolding promise of Caesar's midday's heat peaks. You wander to the nursery beds where Ewer stores seeds for future seasons. He shows you grafted neem cola hybrid, an experimental cross promising enhanced better leaf potency, imported aloe sprouts, fragile seedlings from coastal imports, thriving under careful watering, local heirloom varieties, rare strains of ginger, saved for their superior aromatic oils. He presses a handful of cola seeds into your palm and smiles thoughtfully. These seeds carry our past and our future. Each planting is both a prayer and a plan. You reflect that the palace gardens, far from fixed collections of known species, function as dynamic laboratories. Their ever-shifting plant palette responds to threats, drought, disease, foreign influence, and embodies the Oba's commitment to public welfare. 6. Unresolved growth and future caresses. You retrace your steps through Osanobua's path toward the palace gates. The garden scents linger in your memory, the sharp tang of neem, the warm spice of clove, the soft green bitterness of new leaves. You ponder unanswered questions. Will cinchana bark trials yield a superior fever remedy? Or will its foreignness remain suspect? Can annual festivals reinforce public trust in herbal remedies? When imported medicines arrive with European explorers, how will palace physicians integrate new cures without eclipsing ancestral practices? In times of war or siege, can the gardens produce and the knowledge of its guardians sustain both body and spirit? In the shifting light of late afternoon, you understand that the palace garden's true power lies not only in their curated plants, but in the living knowledge of their herb masters and the oba's willingness to foster innovation alongside tradition. The seeds planted today, both literal and intellectual, will shape Benin's health and politics for generations yet to come. You awake before sunrise to the distant drone of hollow gourds and the soft patter of ritual drums echoing through the red clay streets of Benin City. Today is the annual Ig New Yam Festival, an event so woven into the Edo calendar that even the city's pigeons know to scatter at dawn, clearing space for masked dancers and draped chiefs to process toward the Oba's palace. Unlike foreign harvest rites, Benin's Yam Festival blends royal authority, ancestral reverence, and communal celebration in a single, all-encompassing ceremony that marks both gratitude for the earth, its abundance, and the Oba's renewal of blessings upon his people. Over the next hours, you will follow the festival's first phase, the private consecration of the yam harvest. At the Oba's sacred barn, the ritual serving of new yams to ancestors in hidden shrines, and the dawn offerings that set the stage for public feasting. Through these rites equal parts piety and palace protocol, you will glimpse how the humble yam underpins Benin's politics, economy, and spiritual life. 1. Harvest end and the collection of new yams weeks earlier, before the Harmattan winds cleared the skies. Farmers in the surrounding provinces began unearthing the season's first yams. These tubers, long, knobby roots of the Dioscorea elata, grow in the red earth savannas, their skins smeared with soil and crowned by leafy shoots. Village elders led harvest crews with brass bells hanging at their waists, a gentle ring to ward off malevolent spirits said to lurk in moonlit fields. As the yams were dug, each root was examined. Only those above a certain girth, wide enough to rest comfortably in to hands qualified as new yams. Smaller or damaged tubers were set aside for common consumption, while the prime harvest was bundled in woven straw panniers and packed onto ox-drawn carts. When full, the carts set out at dusk, guided by lantern-bearing porters toward the capital. You join one such cart train on the red dirt road at dawn, its heels studded with cowrie shells. The wagon's wooden wheels creak under the weight of 1,000 new yams. Drivers walk alongside, their ankles jingling like distant thunder. Along the route, welcoming parties lined by drummers and hornblowers greet the procession, stamping their feet and singing praises. Salt of the earth, root of our food, bring forth the feast, renew our mood. Each group carries its own banner-embroidered cloth depicting ancestral masks in hues of ochre, crimson, and indigo, marking regional contributions to the palace's Epicurean tableau. 2. Private consecration in the sacred barn at midday. The cart train arrives at the palace's eastern compound, where the sacred barn stands, a simple structure of palm-thatched roof and mud-brick walls, raised on wooden stilts to keep vermin at bay. Under its eaves, a circle of braziers burns slowly, filling the air with sage and lemongrass smoke. Only eunuchs and select palace priests may enter the barn. You follow Chief Eunuch Erek through low doors into a dim loft space. Inside, hundreds of new yams lie heaped on woven mats, their skins glistening from recent washing. On a raised platform at the barn's heart, the Oba's personal yam gifted the previous season from the largest tuber rests in a carved wooden bowl, crowned with a single kola nut. Erek begins the ritual anointment. He dips a finger into fragrant palm oil laced with ground kola paste and circles each yam's cap. The oil's scent honors the earth's generosity and invokes ancestral favor. Incantation, a low-tone chant in Edo echoes off the barn's rafters, yams of earth and water born. Hear our plea on festival morn. Yield thy sweetness, feed thy kin, bless our fields till next season's din. Offerings, eunuchs place bowls of palm wine and shredded cola husks beside the yams, sealing their prayer with libations. Poured onto the barn's earthen floor through this private consecration. The Oba richly claims the harvest on behalf of all subjects, transforming raw tubers into sacred vessels for divine sustenance. 3. Ancestral yam feast and hidden shriness next. The sacred barn's doors open onto a walled courtyard where small shrines dedicated to past Obas and founding ancestors await their share of the new yams. Each shrine's alcove contains a carved wooden mask and an altar stone. Under the cover of incense smoke, palace priests approach in single file, carrying baskets of steamed yams. Approaching shrine of Oba or Abiru, the priest lays to yams before the carved mask. He sprinkles cola dust around their base and strikes. A brass bell thrice he intones, O Oba of old, accept this root, share in our table, lend us your truth. This sequence repeats at each ancestral shrine. Oba Yudo, Oba Ogiamian. Oba Yudo, an unbroken chain of offerings binding past rulers to the present feast. The final shrine, dedicated to the mythical founder Ogaso Igodo, receives the Obas. Onyam, a potent symbol of continuity and renewal. You feel the hush of ancestral presence in each bell toll and the charged hush. That follows a reminder that these humble tubers grant more than physical sustenance. They sustain the fabric of dynastic legitimacy. 4. Dawn's first public offering as the private rites conclude. The city's drum masters signal the transition to public celebration. From a raised balcony above the palace gate, the Oba addresses assembled chiefs and commoners. Holding aloft a plated bowl of diced new yam smothered in palm oil and pepper, behold the earth's bounty new harvest of life. Partake and prosper in peace. At this cue, eunuchs distribute bowls among the faithful, passing them down ranks of provincial chiefs before commoners at the gate. The new yam soft, buttery, and redolent of earth are a communal blessing, tasted by all in a single act of shared abundance. As you eat, you sense the unity forged by a simple tuber between ruler and ruled, ancestor and descendant, soil and city. 5. Unresolved questions of tradition and change. With your bowl empty and the public feast underway, you notice subtle tensions. In the crowd, some chiefs linger to offer extra yams to Oba's elephant hunters seeking favor. Others whisper about poor rains in their provinces, and rumors of supplementing yams with imported tapioca in years to come, even as dancers weave through the crowd, elaborately costuming yam leaf skirts. You realize the festival's success depends on abundant harvests and reliable rituals. But what happens when soil exhaustion or climate shifts disrupt yam yields? Will the Oba's ceremonies adapt, perhaps adding imported tubers? Or will centuries-old rites buckle under the weight of scarcity? And as neighboring kingdoms observe these revelries, might they craft their own yam festivals, challenging Benedict, culinary and cultural leadership? These questions linger in the midday heat beneath the drumbeats that have called a nation to feast, and will shape the future of Benin's most revered harvest celebration. The moon fades from the sky, and by the time first light creeps through narrow slits in the palace walls, Benin City is already awake. Drums thunder in distant quarters, heralding the second act of the New Yam Festival, the public procession to the Oba's great courtyard, and the ceremony of the communal yam stock. Today, you will follow three intertwined narratives: the political bargaining behind yam tributes, the rhythms of the masked dance through city streets, and the ritual sealing of the yam stock that underpins both palace authority and urban stability. 1. Yam tributes and provincial bargains long before dawn in the palace's eastern compound. The provincial chiefs gather beneath the red brick arches. Each carries his region's finest yams bundled on woven mats, tied with palm fiber cords, and marked with painted symbols denoting origin and clan. Chief Ovia of Udo arrives first, bearing a triangular bundle wrapped in indigo cloth, his ivory hilted, staff planted in the courtyard flagstones. Chief Yu of Ikor Hyamont follows, her baskets brimming with elongated yams spiraled in ochre bands. Inside the audience chamber, the Ayas presides over a low table strewn with yams already consecrated. In Section 1's private rites, the Ayas' voice, measured and grave, addresses each chief in turn. Chief Ovia, your yams from the floodplains yield sweet flesh. Let your tribute be a symbol of Udo's loyalty and your canoe's guardianship of our waterways. Ovia kneels and places his bundle among the display, the timber cap crates rattling softly. He replies, may our yams nourish the Oba's table as our war canoes protect his realm. Next, Chief Yu steps forward. The Ayas praises the size and uniformity of her harvest attributes, reflecting both fertile soil and careful labor. In response, Yu pledges to expand her palm wine shipments to the palace cellars, linking yam bounty with the season's other key crop dot as each chief offers tribute. Subtle bargains emerge, reduced port duties for Udo's fishing fleet, priority, access to palace water for Ikor Hyamwin soap makers, and expanded salt rations for Ekpoma's traders. Yams thus become political currency tokens of allegiance and vehicles of future favors. By the time the last bundle is displayed, the floor before the Oba's throne resembles a mountain of tubers. The Ayas declares, these yams sustain our people. Through your loyalty, may the Oba's blessings flow as abundantly as this harvest. With a single gesture, he signals eunuch overseers to seal the yam stock, each bundle tagged, recorded in the palace ledgers by Isaac, and stored in the eastern granary under armed guard. These records will determine rations during lean months, a stark reminder that the festival's generosity must underpin the city's year-round subsistence. To the great street dance, masks, music, and memories as the yam tributes are secured. You join the throng on Oba Street, where thousands of city residents have gathered behind cordon paths. At the western gate of the palace, the Oba himself emerges beneath a canopy of carved ivory tusks, flanked by ivory-inscribed guards. Behind him follow the masked dancers, members of the Uzama and Egebo guilds, their faces hidden by expressive masks carved from ebony and painted in crimson, soot black, and parchment green. The dance unfolds in 3 acts, the invoking circle. Drummers beat a steady 4-beat rhythm on horizontal slid drums, while hornblowers issue long, mournful calls. Dancers form concentric rings, stepping in unison feet, striking the red earth ground to summon ancestral spirits to the festival. Their masks depict warrior faces, generous patriarchs, and the Yoba's serene countenance, reminding the crowd of the dynasty's roots. The harvest eulogy, the tempo quickens. Dancers advance toward the crowd, swinging arm-length palm fronds and tossing cola nuts into the audience. Women and children reach to catch falling nuts, trophies of ancestral favor. Bards sing a litany of past Obas who, legend holds, once rescued the city from famine by offering yams to the gods. Each refrain ends with a collective call, Eeg, Eeg, new yam, the renewal leap. Finally, the dancers converge on a gilded platform where the Oba watches. In a choreographed climax, they perform leaps and spins around the newly planted cola sapling, symbol of future bounty. On the final spin, one dancer tosses his mask into the sapling's base, an offering to ensure resilient growth. The crowd roars in approval, and the platform is strewn with fresh yams tokens returned from the dancing circle. Throughout, The dancers' elaborate footwork and the drummer's intricate polyrhythms coax the city into a heady trance. You feel the collective heartbeat of being city in each pulse a living testament to the yam's power to unify ruler, noble, and commoner in a single expression of gratitude and renewal. 3. The sealing of the communal stock as the procession disperses. You follow eunuch overseers to the southern granary of whitewashed building sealed. Since the last famine, the newly sealed yam stock from the morning is already housed in the eastern store. Now, the Obus festival requires that a secondary communal reserve be established to feed the city, elders and palace dependents during the year's worst months. You enter the granary to find 5 large clay jars, each capable of holding over 200 tubers. A senior eunuch lifts the lid of the first jar, releasing a faint toasty aroma. Following protocol, blessing of the jar, the Oba sprinkles cola dust into each jar and pours a small measure of palm wine, sealing the blessing with a brass bell toll. Distribution of yams. Eunuchs pass baskets of yams harvested by the palace cultivators and vetted by the chief herb master into jars in groups of 10, each yam tagged with a colored cloth denoting its category: seed, table, or ceremonial, final seal. After filling, the jars are sealed with beeswax-coated clay lids stamped with the Oba's paw print, an unbreakable sign that only the Oba's command may unseal them. This communal stock is as much a statement of palace care as a functional reserve. It ensures that palace elders, artisans, scribes, and eunuchs, many of whom rely on the Oba's stipend, will fare through any lean season, reinforcing loyalty and social stability. For markets and the yam economy merging from the granary, you thread through the bustling open market at the palace's southern approach. Stalls groan under crates of new yams sold by the dozens. Street vendors slice tubers into chips, frying them in palm oil and selling them as crunchy midday snacks. Commoners barter carry strings for bundles of 5 small yams enough to feed a family stew that evening. This market activity is both consequence and extension of the festival. Farmers command premium prices for new yams in the hours immediately after the public feast, funding their purchase of cloth, iron tools, and ritual items. Traders note in their ledgers how the festival spike in yam demand drives commerce in textiles and metal goods, linking agricultural surplus to urban prosperity. Yet beneath the energy lies tension, price gouging by middlemen, complaints from poorer quarters that yams are unaffordable, and rumors of stockpiled yams withheld to manipulate market rates. The Oba's decree spoken in the audience chamber calls for price caps for 2 days post-festival, and penalties for hoarding. Eunuch inspectors patrol the market, verifying weights and prices, wielding both brass bells and iron scales to enforce royal mandate. 5. The unforeseen drought of Mina's afternoon progresses. The sky darkens, though the afternoon rains are still weeks away. An unseasonal wind stirs palm fronds, carrying dust from distant horizons. City elders murmur that this is an ill omen. When New Yam festival skies cloud, the coming rains may fail. Chief priest of Osano Boa, summoned to the market, performs an impromptu ceremony. He sprinkles cola dust into the air, chants winds of change, heed our plea, rain return, from sky to sea. He then strikes a copper gong. It sounds sharp and urgent. Traders pause, dropping coins into startled laps as if the gong's toll halts commerce itself. In its aftermath, marketplace sellers offer small discounts on yams and other produce, a gesture of communal resilience, but also a subtle acknowledgement that the festival celebration cannot mask nature's unpredictable. 6. Unresolved. Seeds of scarcity and adaptation as you leave the market's throng behind and ascend the palace's northern steps. You feel the city's pulse transform from festive to cautious. The yam procession and the communal stock reinforce palace authority and social cohesion. But the drought's omen reminds all that abundance is never guaranteed. Questions hover in the late afternoon air. If rains falter, will the communal stock suffice, or will urban famine test the Oba's capacity to redistribute resources? Will imported root crops manioc from distant shores be incorporated into future Eek festivals? Blending new staples with yam tradition, how will smaller provinces fare if drought shrinks their tributes? And will price caps truly protect commoners, or merely shift burdens elsewhere, as the yam's centrality to Edo life confronts climate uncertainty? What innovations in agriculture and policy will the Oba and his herbalists enact? With the festival's second act completed, the city transitions into its quieter afternoon rhythms, carrying both the memory of feasting and the weight of looming scarcity. You pause at the palace's great iron gates, the yam banners fluttering above, and sense that the Eek festival's true trial lies not in celebration, but in sustaining the city through the year's unseen challenges. Late afternoon light filters through palm fronds as you return to the palace's southern granary yard, where the final and most public act of the New Yam festival unfolds, the Feast of Shared Plenty. Here, the Oba, provincial chiefs, eunuchs, guild masters, and commoners gather to break the communal stock of yams, transforming the ritual reserves into living sustenance, and sealing the social compact between ruler and ruled for another year. Today's ceremonies will test how well the palace balances abundance and equity. Tradition and pragmatism. 1. The opening of the communal jars at the appointed hour. The courtyard's drums fall silent. Reg, the head eunuch, stands before the sealed clay jars that house the communal yam stock prepared in Section 2. He holds a small ivory mallet carved with the Oba's crest. With solemn ceremony, he taps the mallet 3 times on each jar, lid north, south, east, invoking ancestral witness. Then, with assistance, he removes the beeswax seals, lifting the clay lids to reveal rows of pristine new yams gleaming against the dark interior. A hush falls as the crowd beholds the bounty. Before any yam is touched, Chief Priest of Osanobua steps forward, offering a final libation of coal-infused palm wine poured into a clay basin at the jar's feet. He chants, from earth's hidden depths these roots arise. May they sustain body, mind, and ties. He strikes a brass bell, and its deep toll resonates through the rafters. Only then do eunuch attendants pass out wicker baskets lined with banana leaves, ferrying the yams to long wooden tables set beneath woven canopies. The Oba descends from his pavilion, carrying a ceremonial knife with an ivory handle presented by the brass guild last year. He approaches the first basket, lifts a yam, and slices its tip, exposing soft white flesh. He tastes it, nods to assembled chiefs, and declares, "Let all partake in this harvest rich and poor alike." With that, the feast truly begins. 2. Distributing the feast, chiefs, artisans, and commoners' first distribution follows a strict protocol. Provincial chiefs and palace elders receive a heaped plate of boiled yam cubes drizzled in palm oil and pepper paste, honoring their status and recognizing their role in securing the tribute that made the festival possible. Guild masters and eunuch officers stand in the next tier, receiving balanced portions with small vine-wrapped cola sweets, a nod to their custodianship of palace resources and ceremonial infrastructure. Commoners and servants, assembled beyond the tables, receive communal bowls passed by eunuch attendants. Each bowl contains 3 yam chunks and a single cola nut, symbolizing the Oba's promise, no subject shall go hungry while the palace stores overflow. You watch as the crowd divides the food with disciplined fairness, a young mother sharing her portion with a neighbor's child, a storied elder lifting a kola nut in silent thanks, a group of soldiers breaking into quiet chants of Eeg. Each action weaves the festival's promise into everyday life. The Oba's care extends to all, and each person has a stake in the realm's prosperity. 3 tests of equity, scarcity, and supplementation flee through the distribution. A reg signals a pause. An eunuch inspector reports that 2 jars yielded fewer yams than recorded, apparently due to miscounts during sealing or minor spoilage. A murmur ripples through the crowd. The Oba, noticing the tension, steps forward and speaks. Our stores, like our land, may falter in places, but our duty remains whole. Let us correct this. I order that each missing yam be replaced from the Oba's private reserves. No portion shall fall short. He gestures, and eunuchs swiftly retrieve fresh yams from a hidden side store. Their appearance restores calm, demonstrating that palace generosity can absorb minor failures without eroding the festivals. Integrity. The Oba's swift action affirms that communal equity matters as much as ritual spectacle die for. The yam cutters. Rhyme. Oral tradition with distribution resumed. You stroll among the long tables, listening to the yam cutters rhyme, a spoken word tradition performed throughout the feast. A bard recites, root of life, in earth concealed, from your flesh are hopes unsealed. In each bite, may courage grow, in your starch, may blessings flow. The rhyme, accompanied by a simple 4-beat drum pattern, reinforces the festival's themes: life emerging from darkness, communal sustenance, and the cyclical bond between land and people. Commoners join in the refrain, their voices melding in shared cadence and auditory emblem of unity. 5. The feeding of the Oba's sacred elephants as the feast winds down. Attention shifts to a final act, the feeding of the Obas to sacred elephant symbols of royal power and continuity. Temple eunuchs lead the elephants, their tusks decorated with garlands of yam vines, into a side enclosure adjacent to the granary yard. Each is offered a stack of boiled yam discs threaded on wooden skewers. Oba Uica, joined by the Eoba, presents the skewers. As the elephants break off chunks with their trunks, the crowd applauds. A child, perched on his father's shoulders, shouts, "May Benins might grow as strong as tusked mine." The feeding of the elephants unites the human and animal realms, reminding all that the Oba's power, like the yam's bounty, nourishes every living creature under his charged 6. Closing ceremony, the smoke signal farewell as dusk nears. Torches are lit along palace walls. From the southern granary's roof, a eunuch fires a small clay brazier, sending plumes of fragrant smoke spiraling skyward. This smoke signal of plenty marks the festival's close. The smoke rising from remnants of yam skins, kola husks, and camwood scraps is visible from distant quarters, signaling the feast's successful completion and evoking ancestral. Witness one final time, the Oba addresses the lingering crowd. Tonight we end the feast, but let its spirit endure our unity, our care, our hope for another abundant season. With that, drums resume, but now in a gentle farewell rhythm, people begin to disperse, faces warm with shared experience and bellies full of yam. You linger among scattered husks and spent platters, feeling the festival's residual glow, a potent blend of ritual, politics, and community. 7. Reflection. The yam as social contract as you leave the palace precincts under torchlit arches. You reflect on the New Yam Festival's final lessons. Ritual equity, even in abundance. Equity remains paramount. The Oba's swift supplementation of shortfalls reaffirmed communal trust. Political currency, and tributes facilitated bargains linking agricultural surplus to political favor in the palace's corridors of power. Cultural resonance, the yams, Transformation from sacred offerings to communal feasts embodied eco-social bonds, ancestral piety, and public welfare. Adaptive tradition through minor innovations like the child chant refrains and elephant feeding rituals, the festival continues to evolve. While preserving its core meanings, the festival's echoes linger in the city's hum, in the market's leftover chips, and in the collective memory of another harvest secured. Yet the real test lies ahead, in months when fields lie fallow. Will the over-stored yams deliver on their promise? Will the rituals, so adept at celebrating plenty, also guide the city through scarcity? And will the yam's sacred status inspire innovations, new crops, new policies that ensure Bennett's stability in an uncertain future? Tonight, the festival's drums fade into the warm night air, but its questions endure rooted like the yam itself, pointing toward seasons yet to come. You step into the palace's inner workshop just after first light, the air tinged with the coppery scent of bronze and the sweet, resinous perfume of newly boiled palm oil. Here, in the regalia hall vaulted chamber lined with ebony pillars and lacquered beams masters, and apprentices labor side by side to preserve the obas. Most precious possessions, coral beaded crowns, ivory scepters, brass bells, and leopard skin robes. These objects, far more than mere adornments, embody the continuity of dynastic power today. You will follow the careful routines and hidden rituals that ensure each piece remains ready to confer legitimacy, mark ceremonies, and link the living oba to his ancestors. One, the inventory right at dawn before any polishing cloth is touched. The chamber's chief regalia custodian, Ibanosa, leads a ritual inventory. He stands at the central oak table, a single slab carved with the oba's crest, and lays out parchment scrolls listing every item by name, age, and last restoration date. In measured tones, he calls each object, and an apprentice steps forward to present it. Coral beaded crown, last clean 12th day of Ibnemwan, year of the Python. Under Igbanosa's watchful eye, the apprentice lifts the crown, thousands of tiny coral beads threaded on palm fiber strings, and holds it aloft. The morning light streaming through high lattice windows glints off the bead's warm red sheen. Igbanosa nods, checks the crown's coral count against the ledger, and makes a tiny mark in fresh ink. No beads missing. Scheduled next deep clean in 3 months. This procession continues through ivory scepters, each carved with ancestral scenes, brass bells, ivory gilded spears, and the oba's leopard skin wrapper embroidered with coral and brass studs. Each object is named aloud, counted, and cross-referenced. With a thick volume of the regalia register, a leather-bound tome kept under lock and key. This inventory right reaffirms that the oba's power is not intangible, but anchored in the material world, with every bead, shell, and metal fitting its appointed place. Two, cleaning coral and ivory, techniques of gentle carriance inventory concludes. The actual maintenance begins under Igbanosa's direction. Apprentices methodically clean the coral beaded crown. They first lay a soft goat hair cloth beneath the crown, then gently brush each strand of beads with a feathered duster of ostrich plume, lifting dust caught in the tiny crevices. Next, they prepare a mild solution, warm water mixed with finely ground cola paste and a few drops of palm oil to moisten a silk swab. Each bead is rolled between swab and fingertip, the oil nourishing the coral and restoring its matte glow without dissolving its surface. Meanwhile, ivory pieces, scepters, tusk inlays, and small carved masks undergo a different treatment. Ivory, prone to cracking in dry air, must be rehydrated. An apprentice dips a linen swab in a mixture of palm oil and beeswax melted together, then wipes each ivory surface in long, even strokes. The wax seals tiny fissures, while the oil prevents brittleness. Apprentices record any hairline cracks. discovered such as the faint line near the base of the oboe's personal scepter, and note them for Igbenoz's later review. Each cleaning method involves minimal moisture, deliberate strokes, and constant attention to the material's instincts. Coral that crumbles under harsh detergents, ivory that warps if over-wet. The entire process unfolds in near silence, broken only by Igbenoz's precise commands and the soft rustle of silk swabs on bead and ivory. 3. Bronze repair, mending a bell's rim across the workshop. A master bronze caster, Gaio, oversees the repair of a damaged incense bell 1 of 7 used daily during palace offerings. Its rim bears a small chip, producing a dull note when struck. Gaio begins by tuning the bell. He places it on a low wooden stand and uses a bone mallet to strike its outer face, listening intently for wavering tones. Confirming the flaw, he marks the chipped area with red chalk. The repair requires a high heat forge hidden behind a partition of woven reed spar from the crown cleaning station to avoid smoke or heat damage to beads and ivory. Gaio and an apprentice reheat the bell's rim to glowing orange, then apply fresh bronze alloy, melted with charcoal soot and scented with neem leaf smoke to prevent cracks. They hammer the alloy with controlled blows, each strike carefully spreading the molten patch until it forms a seamless extension of the original rim dot. After cooling, the bell is reheated to temper the metal, then ground lightly with coarse sandstone to blend the repair. Finally, Gaio hangs the bell from a test frame and strikes it, its tone now restored to a clear, resonant chime matching its companions. An apprentice records the repair in the regalia register, noting the date, alloy composition, and expected. Next inspection in 6 months. 4. Textile care, leopard skins, and coral embroidery next. Attention turns to the oboe's leopard skin wrapper, rare garment, bearing over 300 polished brass studs and coral inlays along its hem. Textile masters unroll the wrapper on a low cedar table. They first brush its fur with soft bristled palm brushes, loosening dust without removing natural oils. Then they inspect the coral and brass studs, tightening any loose fittings with bone, needles, and fine copper wire. The backside of the cloth, where coral threads weave through animal hide, is prone to wear from sweat and friction. Apprentices carefully apply a thin smear of beeswax dissolved in sesame oil to these areas, then gently massage the area to distribute the protective coating. The beeswax seals the hide fibers while the oil preserves suppleness. Finally, the garment is refolded, each pleat aligned to showcase the coral pattern when draped, and placed within a soft leather cover for storage until the next public audience. A small slip of banana leaf is tucked inside, inscribed with the date and caretaker's name to prevent confusion in future inspections. 5. The ritual rebinding of coral strings late morning brings a ceremony reserved for coral strands worn by palace chiefs, beads used in official council sessions. Each string must be strong enough to bear repeated use, yet supple for comfortable wear. Igbenoz's calls for a coral ray stringing rite in the inner workshop. Cola paste preparation apprentices mix ground cola nut with a few drops of palm oil to create a setting paste that will secure knots. Bead removal using slender bone awls. They slide beads off worn string, checking each for chips. Damaged beads are set aside for recasting or replacement. Ray string in fresh palm fiber cords, soaked in resinous water to strengthen fibers, are threaded bead by bead. After every 50 beads, a tiny knot of cola paste is applied to lock the string, ensuring that a single broken knot will unravel the entire strand. Final blessing once restrung. A senior eunuch passes each strand over a censer of burning sage and sprinkles ground cola dust, invoking Osanobu's watchful presence. Before offerings in the palace's shrine of rebirth. With this ritual, the coral strands gain both physical resilience and spiritual sanction necessary for their role as markers of rank during palace councils and public audiences. 6 unresolved tensions between preservation and USCA's middays heat seeps into the regalia hall. You observe Igbenosa confer with Palace Chamberlain Ureg, the Oba expects to wear the new coral crown at next week's salt ceremony. Will it be ready? Custodian Igbenosa, the crown is polished and secure. A repeated use risks speed fatigue. We recommend alternating with the older crown in reserve. This exchange highlights a fundamental tension that Obas need to display regalia as symbols of authority versus the custodian's duty to preserve fragile artifacts for posterity. Should the Oba insist on constant display of the finest pieces? The workshop's workload in, the items risk will multiply. If regalia remain hidden, the Oba's public image may suffer, undermining his perceived authority. Igbenosa proposes to schedule each crown sees formal use only every 3rd festival, while Ureg considers whether political necessity might demand more frequent display. Their compromise and resolve as yet will shape both palace aesthetics and regalia longevity. 7. Reflection. The living legacy of objects you step back from the central table, where the clean crown, polished scepters, and restored bells sit like silent ambassadors of power, each piece through coral, ivory, bronze, and high-carried stories of past Obas, ancestral alliances, and spiritual pacts. Yet maintaining these objects is not mere conservation. It is an act of renewal, merging craft, ritual, and politics. As you leave the regalia hall, its doors closing softly behind you, consider this. What future innovations from imported materials to new conservation techniques will the workshop embrace? How will custodians balance the demands of display with the needs of preservation? And in a world where foreign influences press ever closer, how will Benin's regalia keep their ancient voice without falling silent? The answered and unanswered both echo in the quiet patter of swabs on beads and the distant toll of a bell awaiting its next repair. A living testament that power, like metal, requires constant care. You stand at the eastern edge of Benin City's guild quarter, just as the morning sun strikes the mud walls, and you sense something amiss. Where once the hive of the Agan Aaron one, the brass casting guild hummed with the steady beat of mallets. Now only half a dozen furnaces sputter to life. Bronze ingots lie unmolten, and apprentices, once dozens, now only trickle in, their numbers thinned by a century of shifting tides. Today, you will explore the first stages of this decline. The pressures of foreign competition, the erosion of raw material supplies, and the social fractures that chipped away at a tradition once held as Benin's crown jewel. 1. The golden ages waning glow in the late 15th century. Benin's bronze workshops were unrivaled. Guild compound after compound filled with the glow of roaring furnaces, the clang of hammers shaping ceremonial plaques, and the whispered hymns that consecrated each casting. Master casters like Gaio and Onabin oversaw teams of 50 apprentices, each responsible for a specific ritual: purification smelts, plaque casting, bell tuning, or alloy preparation, bronze from copper and tin mined along the Ituri forests, and coastal tin brought by Portuguese traders flowed in abundance, fueling both local patronage and lucrative exports to coastal forts. Yet by the mid-17th century, the furnace's light had dimmed. Fewer tributes of tin arrived from the interior. Portuguese traders, diverted by Brazilian veins, offered less copper, and coastal conflicts disrupted riverine routes. At dawn, you find the furnace as a purification cold, their crucibles empty. Apprentices, once numbering 30 at this compound, have dwindled to a handful, many driven by hunger to become canoe paddlers or port laborers, rather than endure the guild's grueling SMELTS. 2. Supply lines under strain you follow Eki, a veteran. Brass prospector along the narrow channel that links Benin City to the northern tin mines. The skiff's paddles disturb silted water, and Eki points to a rusty barge wreck halfway submerged. That was our last major tin consignment from the Owanian mines, he says, tracing a scar across his wrist where he once bore the mines. Tally brand dot in earlier decades. Barge after barge brought heavy ingots of castorites melted into tin by guild forges en route ensuring steady supplies. But now, mine depletion, rich surface deposits have been exhausted, forcing deeper shafts that local tools can't access. Miners face collapsing tunnels and malaria with little state support. Trade diversion, Portuguese fleets, lured by New World. Yields seldom call at the Gulf of Guinea, and Dutch traders, wary of Benin's heavy tariffs, avoid its ports. Riverine conflicts, raids by rival polities on the creek have sunk barges and discouraged. Merchants' Eki skiff drifts past former, loading points where wooden gantries rot. He sighs, without tin, our bronze turns brittle. We patch with more copper, but the alloy loses its voice. 3. Guild fragmentation and apprentices' flight back in the Regalia Hall compound. You find the workshop divided. Master Caster Arbanaya oversees bronze repairs, but his junior colleague, Iasere, lobbies to convert one smelting furnace to process imported iron and metal more readily available. By lacking bronze a spiritual cachet dot at the daily inventory, Ignosa records not only missing copper ingots, but also vacant apprentice roles. He notes, apprentices on leave, 17, expected return, none. A young apprentice, Machina, confesses in a hushed voice that she has taken temporary work in the palace gardens, an easier task with regular rations and lower risk. When questioned, she admits the hours at the forge make her hands crack. The fumes give her headaches, while garden herbs soothe both body and spirit. Broader patterns emerge, labor drain, as palace patrons sponsor herbalists and eunuchs. Guilds offering less prestige collapse into back-of-house roles. Social stigma. Parents hesitate to apprentice children in a declining craft with precarious futures. Political neglect. The obelisk court, preoccupied with coastal trade and crown. Regalia displays, lacks resources to underwrite guild subsidies. You watch Agbanaya and Iasere argue heatedly, one insisting on preserving ancestral methods, the other urging adaptation to ironwork. Their quarrel marks a guild on the brink of schism, torn between tradition and survival. For foreign influences and cultural undercurrents walling past the adjoining trade pavilion, you overhear a Portuguese trader, Duarte, boast to a local broker. Brass may be old world fancy, but iron gates and cannons sell faster. Indeed, imported European armaments cast in cannon foundries in Lisbon arrive in Benin in increasing numbers, their raw iron rivaling local bronze for utility in warfare and construction. This shift in material culture reverberates ceremonial displacement. Bronze bells, once central to palace worship, are sometimes replaced with iron gongs louder, cheaper, and favored by military factions. Symbolic undermining. As iron's prominence grows, bronze becomes a marker of antiquity rather than innovation. Some palace youths mock bronze's soft ring compared to iron's harsh clang. Guild marginalization. Patrons commission ironsmiths to numerous, and less regulated by guild eroding Eigen Aaron one's monopoly on metalwork. You pass. A newly forged iron door installed at a minor shrine its surface unadorned, its lock mechanism superior to any brass equivalent. Nearby, a shattered bronze plaque lies in dust, its repair deprioritized. Culture's tides are turning .5. religious rituals, and eroding authority in the altar hall. You witness a pale echo of earlier ceremonies. Priestess Eoba II once enthralled. By bronze's spiritual resonance now rings an iron bell to summon offerings. The bell's tone falls flat, and worshippers comment that their ancestors do not answer as they once did. Senior priest Olamide murmurs to his assistant. Without bronze, the ancestral bond phrase. Iron bears no story. He pities the Agan Aaron one's decline, but lacks political clout to restore their wares. Even the Queen Mother's staff, once bronze-leafed, now sport iron fittings practical, but unmistakably different. The sensory shift from warm bronze glow to cold iron sheen reflects an empire in cultural transformation. 6. Unresolved futures of guild and craft as you exit through the workshop's side gate. The clink of hammer on bronze is now a distant memory. Questions hang in the midday air. Can Agan Aaron one adapt perhaps by branching into ironwork without losing their ancestral identity? Will the Oba's court renew investments in bronze to sustain spiritual continuity? How will apprentices choose between a dying craft and opportunities in coastal trade, or palace service, and ultimately, can a tradition so dependent on finite resources survive in an era of shifting markets and foreign influence? You stand in the courtyard, furnace chimneys cold behind you, and feel the weight of a craft at crossroads, its future undecided, its echoes growing faint, and its legacy hanging in the balance. The next dawn breaks with a low, uncertain light over the Agan Aaron Wan compound, where once 6 blazing furnaces stood in ordered rows. Now only 3 smolder under reluctant embers. Apprentices arrive in scattered pairs, carrying sparse bronze, ingots and whispered anxieties rather than the clamor of confident mallets. Today, you will witness how the brass workshops grapple with dwindling resources, fractured leadership, and the court's ambivalent support each factor deepening the craft's decline even as artisans strive to preserve their sacred calling. 1. The smelting crisis and resource bargains as first light filters through woven reed blinds. Master Caster Arbaniah convenes a crisis meeting before the furnaces of purification. Only he, Senior Apprentice Machina, and the Chamberlain's envoy, Unico Norhi, attend. The agenda: how to secure enough tin and copper to fulfill the Oba's next Order 12 ceremonial bells for the upcoming harvest rite. Arbaniah speaks gravely. Our last tin consignment arrived 3 months late, and barely half the expected weight. Copper flows in even less. At this rate, we cannot cast all 12 bells, let alone maintain daily upkeep. Machina, still youthful but acute, proposes approaching coastal traders directly. If we guarantee a share of royal commissions, caravels might deliver small tin chests even if at higher cost. Unico Norhi, bearing the Oba's pesa yet looking uneasy, replies, the Oba's treasury is strained by foreign license fees. He might not sanction extra funds for guild importation. They haggle over possible solutions. Royal advance, request a palace loan of cowries, to be repaid by future tribute. Barter deal, offer reclaimed bronze from obsolete plaques, in exchange for 10 ingots. Partial casting, prioritize key bells, perhaps only 8 for ceremonial use, deferring the remainder to next season. Arbaniah, recognizing that deferral signals weakness, opts for a hybrid, cast 6 essential bells now, then pledge reclaimed bronze for immediate barter to secure 10 for the remaining 6. Unico Norhi agrees to present this plan at the next palace council, though with no guarantee of the Oba's approval. To the apprentice's flight and the tension of training Gakris the courtyard, you find Machina teaching a new recruit, Ire, how to prepare sand molds. Ire trembles as she presses her palms on a wet sand, around a wooden bell pattern fearful of miscasting. Machina encourages her gently, steady pressure. Just like pounding cola nuts, the mold must hold its shape, yet after class, Ira confides her doubts. My parents say I should leave to learn seamanship with my brother. There's more pay and less smoke below decks. Her words echo countless others. Apprentice's flight accelerates the guild's erosion, economic pull, canoe crews, and market stalls promise wages and lodging. Social prestige. Serving the Oba as a eunuch or court scribe offers status. Without the brass guild's uncertain future, health, risks, male fumes and hammer accidents warn families away from forged life. Machina. Torn between preserving tradition and acknowledging apprentices' hardship, proposes offering modest stipends and improved meals to guild members hoping to stem the talent drain. She sends proposals to Abaniah, though its feasibility depends on palace favor that may not arrive in time to save her peers from leaving. 3. Palace politics. The Oba's ambivalent patronage later that morning. Eunuch Onorhi briefs the Oba in the Hall of Veiled Council. Abaniah's plan is laid before Oba Uica II. Onorhi, Master Abaniah requests royal cowrie, advances for tin import, and authorizes reclaimed bronze trades. Apprentice retention measures also submitted. The Oba presses his lips thoughtfully. Brass traditions sustain our rights. Yet the treasury strains under coastal licenses and military expenses. Let us prioritize the harvest right bell 6 of highest rank using current stocks. The rest shall await next year's tribute yields. Uica's decree reflects his own constraints war expenses. Drought relief, a new European warehouse. Fees compete for the palace purse. He delegates a modest stipend from the medicinal garden's revenue to support apprentice rations, but declines the larger cowrie advance. The Oba's ambivalent shapes guild fortunes. Immediate needs are met, but long-term viability remains precarious. The promise of rations may comfort apprentices briefly, but without secure metal supplies. The guild's core work falters for, crafting the 6 ritual bells that afternoon. Under Gaio's watchful eye, the workshop ignites 3 furnaces, purification. Furnace smelts old bronze reclaimed from outdated plaques. Shaping furnace melts traded bronze ingots from coastal barter copper mixed with minimal tin. To ensure resilience, temper furnace prepares alloy for final treatment. Over 2 days, 6 bells each inscribed with ancestral names and new python vine motifs are cast. Apprentices take turns operating bellows, feeding charcoal and calling in husks to sustain high heat. Machina monitors the alloys shimmer through a small observation slit. When it glows bright green, she signals Gaia to pour carefully dot at each casting. The apprentice tapping ceremony is observed. Dum, dock, dum, dock. By ancestors' gaze, let bronze prevail lest we falter beyond our veil. The resulting bells, though slightly heavier and with a muted resonance due to reduced tin, endure Gaio's approval. He hangs them for tuning, striking each against calibrated anvils to coax out a clear, if slightly somber, toned out 5. Festival of Bells, public affirmation the 7th on. The completed 6 bells are presented at a minor festival honoring Ogun, the smith god. In the palm leaf pavilion, Oba Uica II, the Eoba, and provincial chiefs attend as a small delegation of brass artisans stand ready. Ignosa steps forward to explain, due to resource constraints, we cast 6 of the intended 12 ceremonial bells. Each toll sustains our rights and invokes ancestral blessing. The Oba lifts his hand. Though we hoped for 12, we honor the labor and pledge to restore full complement when tributes return. Let the 6 bells ring as testament to craft and continuity. He strikes the largest bell. Its clear chime echoes through the courtyard. The 6 bells toll in succession, their combined voice a poignant reminder. Tradition endures even in abridged form. Yet fragility shadows every triumph. 6. Unresolved tensions of sustainabilities. The festival concludes and the 6 bells are returned to the altar hall. You ponder their deeper import. Resource fragility. Will the reclaimed bronze approach sustain future needs or merely postpone crisis? Guild identity. Can the brass casters preserve ancestral methods even as alloys shrink and apprentices dwindle? Palace priorities. Will the oboe's partial patronage lead to renewed investment? Once coastal revenues recover, or will the workshop's marginalization become permanent? Cultural memory. As foreign iron and imported goods reshape palace rituals, will the unique resonance of bronze bells and the rich patina of coral be relegated to museums rather than living traditions standing in the half-light of the regalia hall? You realize that the brass workshop's fate hinges on choices yet to be made in palace councils, in coastal trade deals, and in the hearts of the next generation of artisans. The craft's decline has begun in earnest, but whether a revival remains possible depends on forces both material and political. With these tensions unresolved, you leave the guild quarter beneath the watchful gaze of empty furnace as its future, as uncertain as the muted echo of its remaining bells. You stand on the windswept plains north of Benedict City, where the red earth gives way to saline flats glinting under the morning sun. From early times, salt, a simple mineral, has underpinned the very fabric of Edo life, preserving fish, curing hides, and seasoning staple yams. Yet salt is scarce here. The nearest saline springs lie 100 miles distant, beyond the Uoromu, rivers, marshes, to bring this essential commodity to market. Caravans of oxen and porters trudge ancient routes that thread through villages, forests, and stretches of thorn scrub. Today, you will trace the genesis of the kingdom's salt revenues, the organizing of caravans, the precise tolls levied at each roadside ford, and the bureaucratic machinery in Benedict City that transmuted humble salt into the lifeblood of royal coffers. 1. The origins of the salt traded salt's value in Edo society begins with necessity in the deltas. Humid climate, fish spoil within a day, palm wine sours quickly. Only by curing fish and storing perishables in salt could communities endure the lean seasons. Word of saline springs along the river Alar where mineral-rich groundwater surfaces reached Benedict's court in the 14th century. Obo Zemwind, recognizing salt's strategic importance, dispatched his savviest traders to claim exclusive rights to these springs, negotiating with local chiefs through gifts of coral beads and matchlock muskets over decades. These agreements crystallized into a formal salt monopoly. Caravans bearing leather bags of coarse white crystals would pay tolls on each leg, ensuring both safe passage and a steady inflow of revenue to the oboe's treasury. To organizing the caravans, guilds, and officials be the 16th century. The Salt Caravans Guild, technically a subset of the broader ISIS trading administration, oversaw every aspect of the trade. Recruitment of porters, guild masters, advertised in regional markets for strong young men willing to carry 50-pound bags of salt. They paid each porter a small stipend of cowrie shells and promised grain rations en route, ox teams, and road maintenance, pairs of oxen valued for their endurance hauling wooden wagons reinforced with iron brackets, traversed the 60-mile route in for stages, each marked by way stations where guild-appointed overseers stocked millet, porridge, and fresh water. Toll stations at 6 river fords and 2 mountain passes. Vaulted toll houses manned by eunuch administrators recorded each caravan's manifest, number of salt sacks, oxen, and accompanying traders. Tariffs set by royal decree ranged from 2 cowries per bag in the inner provinces to 5 cowries closer to the delta, reflecting transport difficulty and local scarcity. You follow the caravan's first stage. At dawn, porters shoulder their loads, oxen low beneath yokes, and a herald sounds a long horn to announce departure. At each toll station, the eunuch overseer brandishes an iron tally rod, 2 carries per bag. He intones, dipping a quill into ink to mark each tally in a leather-bound ledger. No salt moves without this endorsement. Any evasion risks confiscation, and fines often paid in additional cowries. 3. The treasury is accounting. From cowries to palace Goldwyn caravans return laden with cowries. Collected at tolls, they deliver them to the salt ward within the palace's royal treasury. Here, eunuch treasury clerks oversee the conversion process, counting and weighing. Cowries small white. Shells are poured into large brass scales. 3,000 cowries equal 1 brass manila. The accepted unit of high-value transactions. Recording. Each conversion is inscribed in the salt tribute register leather-bound. Palm oil-treated pages recording date, caravan code, and total manillas credited. Storage and audit. Manillas are stored in iron-bound chests lined with raffia. Quarterly audits by Isa, the chief scribe, verify that cowries tally with recorded tolls and that no diversions have occurred. This system transforms scattered roadside levies into centralized wealth. Over a year, salt tolls provided nearly a quarter of the Oba's non-land tax revenue, fueling palace festivals, Quranic scholarships, and matchlock purchases for the city's militia. 4. Challenges on the route, bandits, floods, and rent-seeking. Yet the salt routes were not immune to disruption. Bandit gangs, former porters turned outlaws, ambushed caravans at narrow passes, seizing salt bags and oxen. In rainy seasons, swollen streams washed away toll houses, forcing route detours and delaying deliveries by weeks. Moreover, some local chiefs estranged from the Oba's immediate authority imposed protection levies, demanding additional cowries in exchange for safe passage. Caravan masters responded by petitioning the Is, who dispatched eunuch envoys to negotiate reductions, threatening to reroute caravans or sanction chiefs found overcharging. You witnessed one such intervention at the Ikio Pass. A caravan halted until the local chief relents from demanding 8 cowries per bag instead of the royal 5. When the eunuch envoy brandishes his pesa and a written decree, the chief bows and refunds excess cowries, restoring the sanctioned rate. Such episodes underscore that maintaining the salt monopoly required constant palace vigilance, not merely fixed tariffs. 5. The unresolved future of salt revenue. As you return to Benedict City with the last convoy's manillas jingling in your pack, you reflect on salt's paradoxical role, a mundane mineral engineered into royal power through meticulous organization guilds, eunuch administrators, and penal codes. Yet threats loom. Alternative routes. Coastal traders begin shipping Indian salt via Portuguese forts, potentially undercutting inland routes. Agricultural shifts. Innovations in yam preservation may reduce salt's everyday necessity. Diminishing demand. Climate variability, drought, and shifting rainfall patterns threaten both salt marshes and caravan pastures, risking fewer porters and oxen. Each of these forces could erode the salt monopoly and shrink the Oba's revenue base. Will the palace invest in defending routes with armed patrols, subsidize caravanners, or adapt tariff structures to meet changing markets? Or will salt lose its crown as kingmaker of Benin's economy? With these uncertainties hanging over the red clay roads, Section 1 of Salt Routes and the king's revenue ends its questions open, its caravans poised on the brink of transformation. A fortnight after you walked the salt flats and watched the caravans trudge home, the palace's treasury courtyard hums with renewed urgency. Isa, the chief scribe, summons the ISIS Salt Revenue Committee, a body of eunuch administrators, provincial tribute overseers, and palace accountants to review the latest tallies. Over the next hours, you will witness how salt revenues move from raw carries to public works projects, palace expenditures, and the Oba's diplomatic coffers, how bureaucratic debates shape the kingdom's fiscal policies, and how even a commodity as mundane as salt became enmeshed in Benin's political, social, and moral economy. 1. Convening the Salt Revenue Committee in the Hall of Red Ledger named. For its mud brick walls painted a deep ochre, the committee assembles at a low ebony table. Present are Isa, chief scribe, with the salt tribute register in hand, Reg, head eunuch, responsible for enforcing toll compliance, Onorhi, treasury chamberlain, custodian of cowrie and manila chests, chief Ovia's envoy, representing Udos, salt root contributions, chief Yua's accountant, for my core Haiyan Wan, Isa unrolls fresh parchment. February's salt tally shows 1,000,000 to 150,000 cowries collected, converted into 416 manilas, each 3,000 cowries. Of these, 100 manilas have already been allocated, 60 for palace feasts and festivals, and 40 for communal relief during last week's flood, leaving 316 manilas in the general treasury. Isa's voice is measured, with grain rations restored. After February's floods, we now face drought in western provinces. The Oba must decide allocations for drought relief, militia matchlock payments, and the upcoming foreign envoy's audience. He turns to Reg, have provincial chiefs delivered on the rim-adjusted toll of 2.5 cowries, as decreed. Reg nods. Bilma complied at 85%, Udo at 70%, Ekpoma still at 50%, citing customary fees levied by minor chiefs. This discrepancy provokes debate. Should the palace pursue punitive audits at Ekpoma potentially? So in resentment or adjust policy to ease local burdens and secure future compliance? 2. Debating drought relief versus militia funding. Gara stands and presents a proposal. We recommend allocating 100 manilas for drought relief grain and salted fish shipments to western districts. Another 100 manilas for matchlock ordnance to reinforce palace militia, ensuring salt routes remain secure from bandits. Chief Ovia's envoy interjects. Without sufficient militia, drought relief caravans risk ambush. Security and relief are two sides of the same coin. Chief Yua's accountant counters. Farmers bear the brunt of nature's whims. If we fail to feed them now, future tribute yields may shrink more severely than any bandit threat. The committee weighs options. Allocation option drought relief manilas militia manilas remaindera. Balance proposed 100101116B. Relief priority 1507591C. Security priority 75,125,116. Asterisk after spirited discussion, the Oba's directive arrives via Reg. Adopt option A, provide 100 manilas for drought relief. Transporting grain and cured fish to afflicted villages. Allocate 100 manilas to militia pay and weapons maintenance. Guard the remainder for palace and diplomatic needs. This compromise reflects the Oba's dual responsibilities, sustaining his people's welfare and maintaining order on vital. Trade Carters. 3. Organizing drought relief caravans with relief funds approved. The Salt Caravans Guild refits to northbound caravans to carry both salt tolls and relief provisions under the charge of Onorhi's deputy. Each caravan receives grain rations, 10,000 gourds of millet and sorghum, purchased from palace granaries at subsidized rates. Cured fish, 5,000 smoked catfish fillets packed in palm frond baskets to enhance protein. Intake. Medical supplies, doses of fever elixir, and wound saw from the palace gardens enough for 3 weeks. Additional cowrie stipends, 1,000 cowries per porter to cover increased hardship. You accompany the first relief caravan as it departs at dusk, headed by a eunuch overseer and escorted by palace militia. The caravan forms a disciplined column. At each toll station, overseers verify that relief goods are in sealed containers preventing illicit diversion, and record delivery logs. This extra paperwork, enforced by eunuchs, underscores the palace's commitment to accountability, distinguishing royal relief from ad hoc charity. For strengthening the militia and arms maintenance as a mulius, 100 manillas set aside for militia. Funding are directed to the palace armory. There, Honorhi oversees matchlock maintenance. 50 matchlocks are dismantled, cleaned of powder residue, and reassembled. Flints are replaced, match cords renewed, and flash pans lined with fresh serpentine clay. Musket ball casting. Apprentices cast 5,000 lead balls in small sand molds, each weighing precisely 80 grains to ensure firing consistency. Training sessions. Militiamen receive stipends from salt revenues to dedicate additional drills to ensure readiness for bandit skirmishes on the Alar Flats. At the militia's evening muster, officers display newly serviced weapons and practice volley formations near the palace moat. The glow of burning torches illuminates disciplined rows of soldiers and assertion that salt revenues, once paid in cowrie shells, have been transformed into the kingdom's security. 5. Diplomatic stipends and foreign invoice with 116 manillas remaining in the general treasury. Isaac proposes setting aside 50 manillas for diplomatic use as gifts to visiting envoys or minor rulers who seek audience. Eunuch Honorhi supports this, noting that strategic alliances hinged on generosity. A case of cowrie worth 20 manillas can secure a small polity's loyalty and smooth barter trade agreements for years. Chief Yua's accountant urges caution. Heavy diplomatic gifts may deplete our ability to meet internal needs. We recommend 25 manillas, reserving the rest for palace contingencies. Obayuka's final instruction arrives. Allocate 30 manillas. For diplomatic gifts, stock among them cowrie strings and coral pendants. Reserve the remaining 86 manillas for palace emergencies and fiscal buffers. Thus, salt revenues underpin not only local administration and army pay, but also the kingdom's broader diplomatic network, fueling gifts that cement alliances without resorting solely to martial force. 6. The moral economy of salt as the committee disperses. You linger to consider the multifaceted value of salt. It is a staple preservative, a lubricant for palace politics, and a form of currency that translated fleeting labor into durable state power. Yet, beyond numbers and allocations, the moral economy of salt emerges. Justice versus profit, the Ova's careful balancing of relief and security underscored a ruler's duty to protect subjects from both hunger and violence. Transparency versus secrecy. Eunuch-led audits and overseers' logs demonstrated transparency, yet sealed purchase orders and diplomatic stipends remained hidden, reflecting necessary discretion. Abundance versus scarcity. The cycle of collection, storage, distribution, and reserve highlighted the kingdom's perpetual tension between feast and famine. Leaving the Hall of Red Ledger, you pass the palace granary, where sacks of salted fish and grain await relief dispatch. Nearby, the armory's torchlight flickers against reconditioned matchlocks. Beyond the palace gates, relief caravans depart northward at dawn, while militia patrols fan out across the salt flats. The economy of salt has thus reached into every corner of the realm, economic, social, and spiritual, its revenues coursing through Benin's body politic like a lifeline. 7. Unresolved challenges and future debaticide questions remain as bright as carries under torchlight, route security, while militia patrols funded by assault revenues deter bandits permanently, or will escalating costs demand new taxation, climatic flux, should the palace invest salt revenues in road improvements, bridges, and causeways to ensure caravans' resilience in floods, market innovation, as coastal traders introduce imported salt and trade in iron nails and cloth. How should tolls adapt to maintain competitiveness? Moral equity, will price caps and relief allocations protect the poorest? Or will new mechanisms such as tiered rates for commoners be needed? In the palace courtyard, already gearing up for the drought relief caravan's return, you sense that salt's simplicity belies its complexity, a mineral commodity that, through the Oba's administration, became a keystone of empire building. As the next convoy's horn fades into distance, you realize that the kingdom's fiscal stability and its capacity to weather future storms rely on choices yet to be made in halls of red ledger and on salt-sprinkled rows.